Good evening, everybody, and thank you guys for tuning in this evening. I'm Ryan, Heavenly Hills Homestead. You all know me. This is Jason Loris. I said that right, last name right?
Sir, you're
Okay.
right.
And he is the world record holder for giant butternut squash. You guys will remember. Give you a little backstory on this. So, 2020, Chris Brown gets the world record at 55 pounds. 2021, I get the record at 83.1 pounds. 2022, Derek Ruthruff gets it at 104.5, I believe. And then this year, it's blown away again by none other than Jason here at how much? 130.
Well, I broke the world record twice. I had the 124.6 pounds that I took up to West Virginia, up to Craigsville at the festival up there. I knew it was pretty big. I was measuring it, throughout the season. And I was like, man, I got to be getting close. And I got the seed to start off with Paul Jarsh. Paul Jarsh had a 103-pounder at the state fair last year. And
Right.
First year going up there, he handed, I asked him, I said, hey, man, what is that? He said, oh, butternut squash. I said, that's a what? So anyways, he gave me the seed, and that's how I kicked off. But inadvertently, I grew one plant, but I also grew a secondary one. And so the secondary one weighed in at 131.4 pounds. So I broke the world record a week apart. So I had two world records in the same season, but I can only, and so it's mind blowing.
Right. And that's pretty cool, to be able to break, that's what Chris Brown did. Chris Brown broke it at 55.5, turned around and broke it at 65.1, I think. And so here you are doing it again. We're seeing this leap and bound in the butternut movement, right? So my thinking is if we're seeing these big gains, 20 to 30 pound gains, on butternuts, when do you think it's going to plateau, or do you think it'll plateau?
Uh-oh. You there? Oh. So I don't think we're close to plateauing, honestly. I think now I'm not going to grow it again this year. I'm going after some different stuff to try.
Right.
But I believe there's enough of the seeds out there that next year, I think you guys are going to see a 140 or 150. But where I think in 5 years, I think you're going to see one that's going to break the Morrow. I believe the Morrow is at 200 and some pounds.
10, I think 210 or something like that.
Yeah, I think the butternut squash can actually blow away a Morrow just because how aggressively this plant is. I mean, down in the South here, this plant is very resilient to heat. I didn't see my plant had no heat stress. And I think the key factor in the plant is if you can keep the stress off of a plant and focus the energy more to feeding the fruit on the plant, that I think you can get a lot more on there. And with science research and all the things that are at our fingertips now, and with the technology, we can use that to help push these to 200 to 300 pounds is what my guess would be.
I kind of concur with that. The Morrow is 256, 9.8 ounces.
Okay.
So,
yep.
We're it's getting close to 257 pounds there. I think you're right on the butternut, because the butternut, that whole top half is full.
Yeah.
It's the bottom half has got that seed cavity in it, but the whole top of that is full flesh, nothing but flesh. A Morrow, from the best that I can tell, is kind of like a field pumpkin, hollow all the way through.
Sure.
So I think you're right in that if you get a butternut close to the size of some of these field pumpkins or Morrows, it's going to weigh more than them because of it having that full cavity in the upper half of its body. So I think you're right. But I think that we're going to see a plateau pretty soon, to where not necessarily a plateau to where it just stops and goes. Right. I think it's going to be like right now we're skyrocketing.
Oh,
right.
Crazy.
Right. Absolutely. But I think what's going to happen is we're going to get to where we hit it, and then we're going to move by little increments. Instead of hitting these 20, 30 pound gains, I think we're going to end up seeing it broke by 1 to 10 pound, maybe even less than that.
Well, and I think what also we need to do is when we get to that point where I don't know the genetic that I'm running, and like I said, it's Paul Jarsh, and I talked to Chris Brown a little bit more about the butternut squash and where it kind of started from. He actually gave me more of a backstory on it.
It's a pretty interesting story, isn't it?
Yeah, he told you the whole story where it came. I believe
yeah, he can't remember he can't remember exactly where the seeds came from, but he had gotten them in and was looking. He was like, well, "I'm gonna grow them," and he ended up growing it. And then he had to go through the whole process of with Guinness and trying to convince them to turn it into a world record because it was a C Machada and all that. Yeah, it's a very interesting story.
Yeah, and like I said, that seed stock, the first time I made it to the United States, it wasn't a U.S. butternut squash. It was actually in Pennsylvania with the Midnights up there, or Quakers, or
Right.
But anyways, they started out with the seed, and he got it from them. But I don't know how that transaction went. But that's how Chris started off, and that's kind of summing it up.
Right. It's very interesting. I always, whenever I first got it, 2021 was my first year of growing, and what is it?
I said that was crazy. I mean, I looked at that thing. I said, man, look at that, and I was wondering because I was going flipping through all the pictures on Facebook and everything, looking at butternut squash. And I was Paul said, hey, do you think He said, I don't know. I mean, you got stiff competition, but I see in yours. I said, I don't know. I don't think mine's that big. So I was doubting myself all season long. So, but I was really impressed with your skill, and you gave the big thumbs up, and I mean, it was a nice specimen. Definitely, I definitely give you props, and I'm really honored to be a part of you guys.
It was a lot of fun, growing it that year. It was my first year growing, and I reached out to Chris and I was like, hey, you got any seeds, and he sold me some of them, and they were all for the 50. He said, do you want the 55 or do you want the 61 or 65.1? I was like, yeah, give me the 55s. And I took those and grew it. And then, I had two plants. One plant was a graft. I had to graft it back to itself because it broke off, and I grafted it back to itself and grew it. The other one was a good, healthy plant, grew really big. I had one sitting in the corner of my garden because I actually put them in the garden. I had it sitting in the corner there, and it was starting to get pretty big in that corner. And somebody was getting ready to weigh one. I think it was either Randolph Palmer or Chris McDonald. One of the two was getting ready to weigh one.
Sure.
And I wanted to know what mine weighed, right?
Sure.
Because I had jokingly made a comment when I got them. I planted the seeds and I said, there's just been planted a new world record, right? And I was just joking. I didn't have any clue what I was doing in 2021. I just started growing. And I just said, there's a new world record right there, just playing around. So anyhow, fast forward all the way to September, and I got that thing, growing, and they're getting ready to weigh theirs, and I want to know what it weighs. So I got there with a scale trying to stick it under, trying to weigh it. And all four corners wasn't touching firmly, so it couldn't weigh it. So I was stuffing sand underneath there, trying to get it to where I could put that scale under and get a weight. And when I went to stuff the scale under the next time, it went and broke off. And I was like, oh, crap. No, I didn't just do that. And I looked and I was like, oh, got sick. Picked it up and weighed it. It was 60 pounds. I said, still broke the record. So I run and write Chris. I'm like, hey, man, I just weighed this. It weighs 60 pounds. I got to find a way off to take it to. But it broke the world record, man. He's like, oh, that's awesome, blah, blah, blah. Anyways, I get Chris Rodabaugh to take it to the Kentucky State Fair, or not Kentucky State Fair, the Kentucky weigh-off at Robertson Family Farm, I think it is. And it weighed 59 pounds there. And I was like, okay, so it lost a pound in a week. That's not bad.
Right.
But then it got broke. It got broke again twice that day, I think, and then consecutively for a couple weekends. Well, the following weekend, it got weighed that weekend. There was one full week, and the next weekend it got broke again, and I found a little ovary about that big, and I pollinated it just to play around. And I kid you not, within 1 week, that thing was huge. It was like this
that grows
in
fast.
a week. And I'm like, Annie, this thing's growing real. Oh, it's not. So she goes out there 2 days later, and it's doubled the size that it was when she said, Ryan, that thing's really growing. I was trying to tell you 2 days ago that it was really growing. So long story short, 38 days from ovary till the frost came and I cut it off. It was 83 pounds in 38 days.
That's
And
great.
to my knowledge, I don't know how fast yours was growing, but or how many days it went. But to my knowledge, that's still the fastest growing butternut squash. And I wish it would have went 65, 70 days, because who knows how much that could have done.
Yeah. So how many days did you do that 83 pounders? Did you from flower? You pulled it. How many days was it on the vine again?
38.
38 days.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my gosh, dude, you're crushing it. You're crushing land speed for that thing.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like me, still to this day, when me and Chris, Brown talk about it,
Right.
we still talk about, I wish it would have been able to grow 60 to 75 days, because at the rate it was growing, it was just phenomenal.
Yeah.
I mean, I had never seen, I mean, it literally, when I say it went from ovary, a little flower, right? Ovary, when I pollinated it, to this, it did that in a week.
Oh yeah. Oh, absolutely. 100%.
I mean, it just went whoop, and I was just sitting there going, the other one didn't grow that fast, And then I started the plant was 600 square foot. So then I had to go dive in the plant, and I'm finding culls everywhere, 10, 15, 20 pound culls, and I'm chucking them out. It was fun.
Oh man, it was crazy. Now, did you have any heat drought? Because I mean not drought. I'm sorry, heat exhaustion in the plant where the leaves would droop down. Did you experience any of that through the season?
No, and I think 2021 was a pretty hot year.
Was it? Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, I was just wondering if you had. Because like I said, the genetics was amazing to me. Is looking at the genetics of, and I didn't get to see Paul. I didn't know Paul then, so I didn't see the plant, and I haven't really seen anybody else's plant. But Paul told me, so yeah, this thing really don't have to do much, water and feed it.
You don't.
You don't have to worry. The bugs, they try to attack it every now and then, but I really didn't get a lot of problems with it for myself. And did you have any bug issues with yours that you were worried about?
Nothing. I'll be honest with you, and this is the truth, and you can ask my wife. I got so caught up in my big pumpkins because I had a couple of them. Well, that year I had one that was officially over 1,000 pounds at 1,016. I had another one that was like 908, and I had another one that measured 849 and ended up weighing 950. But I had already, the bottom had rotted out completely out from underneath it. I had gutted the seeds out from it and cut it and left it out there for a week. So, it was dehydrated. Then I took a chainsaw and cut it into chunks and weighed the chunks and added them up to get 950. So it was probably over 1,000 pounds itself. So technically that year I grew like I was so tied up in them big pumpkins that I've literally neglected that butter. I would go over there and look, and, whenever I was growing the 60 pounder, and I was like, oh, okay, it's doing good. I haven't watered in 2-3 days. I better give them some water, and I'd water it.
Yeah,
I didn't feed it really any. I tell you what I did do. I planted it in pig manure.
There you go.
I did that. And listen, I even told that to oh goodness, I think it was it was one of the clubs up north in like New York, Rhode Island, somewhere around in there. They got a publication. I think it was Steve Connolly, and he got he wanted to know how I grew it and stuff. And I told him I grew it in pig manure. I mean I did a couple. I buried a few vines here and there with black cow. You know what I mean? And did a couple other. But I mean, I never really fooled with it none. Whenever I got to the end, the pumpkins and the watermelons was together. Yeah. And that plant, or not the pumpkins, the butternut and watermelon were running together. It was growing up in my tomato trellises and everything, man. Like I didn't do anything with it. And there was 2 plants, and that one plant was, kind of crappy because it was a graft. But I mean, the bugs didn't touch it. The heat didn't bother it. I had no issues whatsoever with that plant. I mean, if you could get that kind of growth and that kind of endurance and issues from bugs not really bothering it, if you could get that crossed over into giant pumpkins or crossed over into field pumpkins or Mara or anything like that, I would even like to get to a point where we can try to graft it and see if grafting doesn't help get some of those characteristics into say a Morrow or a field pumpkin, because I have a very hard time. I've grown Morrows for 2 years in a row.
Yeah.
It is the only thing that has eluded me for 2 years. I can't get one bigger than that.
Was it split out on you?
They won't grow.
Really?
I can plant them right beside my field pumpkins, and them plants will take off both like rockets.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
The field pumpkin will grow a state record, and the Morrow will sit there and won't put on nothing. And it'll just be like this.
Yeah. Now, I haven't tried a Morrow, and I'm actually requested some seeds from the guy that helped me with Guinness.
Sebastian.
Yeah, Sebastian. Great guy. I talked to him on the phone.
Awesome guy. I really like him.
Yeah, phenomenal grower. And anyways, I haven't reached out to him in a little while, but I've asked for some seeds from the Morrows because I know he's got a pretty good strain, and he actually had a pretty darn big one a few years ago. But I'm just wondering, because I haven't done a Morrow myself, so I don't know if they're heat sensitive, if they prefer cooler temperatures. I'm assuming it's a cooler plant, so you got to probably baby them a little bit more, I'm assuming.
From what I can tell, the best I can tell, is when the summer heat comes on. Because like I say, I'll plant them both, and I direct sow both of them. I don't grow them in pots. I think June 10th is whenever I started them this year. June 10th or June 15th. Excuse me. But I'm pretty sure it's June 10th. I put them in the ground, and they took off running, both the field pumpkins and the Morrows. And I had 10 field pumpkin plants, and I had 7 Morrow plants. And they all took off. But once July got here, end of July, beginning of August got here, and it started to heat up. Because remember, we had a really cold summer.
Yep.
And then all of a sudden, the heat kind of kicked in. Well, when that heat kicked in, that Morrow plant just went downhill.
Yeah.
You know?
Did it have a heat stress on the leaves? Did all the leaves kind of fall on you during the day?
They didn't really look bad. They never looked bad.
Really?
Yep. The plants never looked bad. And I cannot figure out for the life of me why it will, because I'm sitting there scratching my head thinking, is it the soil? Then I'm like, well, hang on a minute. I got field pumpkins and Atlantic Giants growing here, and I'm producing pretty good sized field pumpkins and some, 500-600 pounders, Atlantic Giants in here. It can't be the soil. It's the same soil that I grew my giant butternut in, and it grew a world record. So I would have thought, but the only thing I can think is that the heat, when it gets to a certain temperature,
it turns them off.
It must shut them down somehow, just enough to where you're not getting leaf wilt. You're not really losing much on your growth as far as plant would be. But I noticed the flowers start to go down.
They get small. Do they get smaller? You see your flowers getting smaller?
No, they're not getting smaller. They're just the rate at which you have females and males start to drop.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And then after that, if you do get one pollinated, once it pollinates, it's micro growth. Just do. And
right.
Yeah. So the past 2 years, I think I weighed the smallest one ever weighed in last year. And it was like 0.02 ounces. Yeah. It was a week old. It was only like that big. No. It was over like a week and a half old. It was only that big.
Oh my God.
Yeah, so it was like 10 to 12 days old and wasn't just
I
like
feel
that.
That's your kryptonite currently based on what you're telling me about the plant. So you're like, all right, I'm going to beat you one way or the other. I just got to figure what the combination is.
Yeah, I've actually thought about doing this next year, growing no pumpkins at all, no Atlantic Giants at all. And here, because there's several reasons we ain't going to jump into, but no Atlantic Giants at all next year. Just let all the haters hate and have it. None for me. Grow nothing but green squash, all right, and Morrows. Morrows and green squash, because those are the two things that for 2 years now I've not been able to get on a scale. Last year, go ahead.
Have you tried I think it's called Luna squash or Laguna squash?
The D Napoles or whatever it is. Yeah, the Lunga D Napole or something like that.
Have you tried one of them?
I've not tried them. I don't have seeds for them. If I had seeds for them, I probably would try it.
I got him on Facebook. I can't think of his last
Kim
name.
Hebb.
Yeah, he's got them.
Yeah. I
Now,
probably should reach out to him and see if I can get some off of him.
he just broke the world record. He broke his world record twice.
Right.
Actually, yeah, he grows them real big up there. I think he's up in Kansas, if I remember correctly. He's up
I don't know
north.
where he's at. It might be Kansas. It might be over where Tony Prochaska's is.
Yeah, Tony Prochaska area. That's right. He's up farther north. But anyways, that'd be another one interesting to do.
It would be.
Tomorrow, butternut, and Napoleon squash. If you was able to take those three in some way, use them to help the other one push
right
different level.
Right. That would be that would be pretty cool if there was a way to either, graft them together or
you call it
interbreed them together.
Yeah.
I don't know what the lunga is. I don't know if it's a Peppo or a Machada or what. So the butternut is a Machada.
Okay.
The field pumpkin and Maros, I believe, are both Peppos, I think. Then you got the Atlantic Giants is a Maxima. I'm not sure what the lunga is. The only other one is Mixta.
Mixta, okay.
Yeah, Mixta is what Cushaws fall under. So you got – go ahead.
Yeah, I've grown to pretty good size Cushaws, 20, 30 pounders,
Yeah.
How big they can get, but those are fun to grow if you haven't done a Cushaw before.
World record is held in West Virginia at 54 or 55 pounds.
Really?
Yeah. And it was set back a long time ago, and I've tried to beat it the past 2 years.
Really? Yeah, I had them in Arkansas. That's when I first fell in love with gardening. It was up in Fort Smith, Arkansas when I was about 12 years old. And I had a state record. I grew a 206-pound pumpkin in Arkansas, broke the 50-year state record. And I don't even remember where what the world record pumpkin was back then. But I was just a little boy, and didn't know much. But we had huge Cushaws and hell, probably had other state records that I didn't even know about. But all I cared about was like, check out this pumpkin, and I had 20-pound cantaloupes back then too. So
right.
But anyways,
it's always fun to go to the state fair. Yeah, but when you're a kid and you're seeing that stuff for the first time,
yeah,
I mean it stays in your mind.
Oh my gosh, I never forgot it. I'm 45 years old and never forgot the experience I had at 12 years old. Thanks to my mom and dad. My mom and dad she got the Atlantic Giant seeds out of a catalog, out of a seed catalog. She said, hey, what do you think about growing some pumpkins in the backyard? And we lived in the neighborhood. And I said, oh, Mom, that's great. And so she ordered us. And I said, oh, cool. So anyways, then when we grew, the first year we grew pumpkins, the Atlantic Giants, we had 4 pumpkins. And we didn't prune them. We didn't do anything. We just let them do whatever they were going to do. I had a 150-pounder, 120, 110. We milk fed one and turned an orange pumpkin white before we picked it. I don't know if you've ever tried to do that, take a pumpkin and turn it white.
No, how you do that?
So what you do is you take a 2-liter bottle, you take a surgical tubing, and you put it on the nipple of the 2-liter bottle. You remember the old school 2-liter bottles that had the little plastic bottoms on there?
Oh, yeah.
Anyways, you take the tubing, you stick it on the nipple of the bottle, and you fill the bottle up with regular cow's milk. We use that. You fill it up, and then you take it, and then you get you a calf needle and put the rubber tubing on that, and that's where the stem feeds into the pumpkin. You put the stem or put the IV right there at the stem, and all the phosphorus that flows through that tube, and we have to fill it about once a week. It took that pumpkin and took it from an orange color and turned it snow white.
That is crazy.
It was the coolest thing. So, now we have pumpkins that are genetically designed to grow white, but we did it without it. We used phosphorus from cow's milk, and it changed the pumpkin. You ought to try it sometime just for fun. But
I want to do that just on a giant one, on one of my, 500-600 pounders that I just like to grow just to play around with, and try to turn it white like it. That'd be cool, man. That'd be very cool.
Yeah, we did that one time. I don't know if that was a fluke or what. I don't know, but the other pumpkins were orange except for the one that we did that to. My dad said, well, let's see what happens. They see phosphorus is good for them, so let's try cow's milk. So it was my dad's idea. So sure, that's what we did.
See, I've heard a lot of people giving them cow's milk, and putting it through the vine, and you wouldn't believe how many people come up to me and say, "Did you feed it milk?" And I'm like, "No, I didn't feed it no milk," and because now, and I'll tell you this: whenever I don't know if you ever heard the stories. In 2017, my dad grew this really big field pumpkin that at the time would have been the West Virginia state record had we had known that there was state records, right? So whenever he done that, I was very curious as to how he done that. I'm like, how did he grow that? So I'm sitting there on the porch, how to grow giant pumpkins,
Sure.
and Googling it, and I find Atlantic giants, and they're, these great big, and I'm like, Dad, they got 1,000-pound pumpkins, bro, And so anyhow, he's like, oh, wow, that's cool. And some of the very first things that popped up was feed it milk. So then I start Googling how to feed a pumpkin milk, and it's got these old timers taking, hey, listen to me. Hey, you two, you know better. Bounce. Go get your mama and let her deal with it. Sorry, man.
No, you're good.
So anyhow, they were talking about, these old timers were getting mason jars and they were putting the lids on them and the ring, and then they would punch a hole in there and put an actual wick from a lamp into the slot in the Kurz jar, right?
Okay.
And then they would take that wick and stick it into the pumpkin vine, and that pumpkin vine would draw all that milk out. And then they were like, see, this is how we're getting these pumpkins that big. And I'm sitting there going, Dad, they say you got to feed it milk, And so it wasn't until later that I found out that, milk wasn't necessarily getting that. They were taking the milk. Yes, they were drinking the milk, but it wasn't what was making them big. It was just taking the nutrients and the water content up through the vine and drinking, basically.
Yeah. Now, do you think, I don't know what his look like, but did they change colors by any chance? Were they lighter or anything like that? Because ours, I don't know. Like I said, it could have been a fluke. I don't really know. We didn't cover it, so it had the same sun as all the other pumpkins. We didn't know what we were really doing. It's just something, and it did.
It could have been what turned it white. I don't know. I don't think it messed with that one's color, but it wasn't in the stem. It was in the vine.
Oh, I got you farther down.
What,
so pumpkin,
yeah.
Right. In the stem itself.
Right. Yeah, this wasn't in the stem. This was just in the vine. And you can look on YouTube. There's videos out there of this old guy with this Kurz jar, his ball Kurz jar, whatever it was, and poking out, slotting that lid and putting that wick in there and letting that pumpkin suck up that. And I'm sitting there going, Dad, you got to feed him milk. You got to feed him milk. And he's like, all right, So, I always tell him whenever he comes over, he'll make the joke. Well, did you feed that one milk? And I'm like, no milk for that one. But because I literally was all in for feeding it milk. I was like, heck yeah, I'll feed that thing gallons and gallons of milk. Yeah, that's what makes them big like that.
Thing is if you think about it, milk does the body good, and
right. I was just thinking that.
So the thing is the vitamin is there. What we put in our plants is what we consume in our bodies, right? So if you're putting good stuff in your plants and you feed them milk, and maybe it's a wise tale, maybe it isn't. But the thing is the same thing that our bodies need is what our plants, our animals, everything that makes a full circle go around. We all live off the same stuff in different ways.
That's true.
That's kind of my logic, anyways. I don't know if it sounds crazy or not, but that's kind of a logic.
I don't think so. I mean, here's the thing. Another thing about this, because Jason Covey had mentioned this as well.
Sure.
We all these companies, all these fertilizer companies, the thing that you see them promote, NPK first.
Yep.
And then micronutrients.
Yep.
Your zinc, your copper, your selenium, cobalt, and all those different things. Boron, magnesium, manganese, the whole those.
Yeah, it's a lot.
Right. Here's the thing. The thing that you don't see most of these companies promoting is vitamins.
Yeah, absolutely. Trace
So,
minerals.
right. It's always the NPK and the macros and the micros. Where are the vitamins? Because those plants need those vitamins as well.
Right.
If you go on
Absolutely.
if you go on Prevogenics and look, their liquid compost says, you know, liquid compost, blah blah blah, microbes, this and vitamins.
Yep.
Um, you got to have the vitamins.
Right. And,
So you're right. Feeding them milk would give them
yeah,
vitamins.
in the right vitamins. And, to add on with what you're saying about that, ever since I've been, I know more now than I did as a kid because I didn't have the internet. We didn't even have cell phones then.
Right.
But, and so we always went by what old farmers thought and stuff. So adding organic matter, cow manure, chicken manure,
Yep.
these things. And those things are all fine and dandy, and those do help. But what I also know, I used to do a little bit of bodybuilding when I was over in Iraq and Afghanistan. I didn't have anything else to do better than to go to the gym, right? So
Trust
that's
me,
all.
I know all about that too, bro.
So one thing I learned though, and I didn't realize it would make me have a different view about gardening, but when I was going through the experience, right, trying to be the biggest guy and the strongest guy, as I read a lot about vitamins. And the big thing that I learned about vitamins, and also too, if we went to a different, and I won't go too far this way, but vitamins, I've read articles and stuff. They said if you could give your body every known vitamin that your body would ever need, you would never age, you would never get older, and we would live a longer life.
Yep.
But garden stuff, if you gave a plant every micronutrients or every trace mineral that you could possibly toss at it that you knew that it needed, dude, I don't know if I could fathom where things could go, because I think if we could go back now without doing more extensive research, I don't have anything to back up what I'm saying here. But if we went back to the dinosaur age and look at some of the plants, now they had dinosaurs. Obviously, we saw they were quite large. So I would have to say
Right.
that, and all the different things back then were more richer. There was more of it. Now I think our planet's more depleted because we've used up a lot of our natural resources, and I
Right.
don't think we get the same exposure. But now we have to try harder, and we have to dial it in for the areas that we try to grow these giant vegetables. So I don't know. It's things that I think about, and I need to do more digging on there to see if I got any proof to back up what I'm saying.
I mean, it makes sense. And here's the thing: go out into the woods.
Yep.
Do them plants, even in a drought, do
Right.
them plants look like they're hurting for anything?
Nope.
No, they
Not at
look
all.
they look great.
Yeah.
They look fine. They're doing great. They might not have been watered in a month and a half or 2 months, whatever. They're doing just fine. They've got the foundation blocks. They've
Sure.
got the macros. They got the micros. They've got the vitamins. Here's the thing. It's just like people. The American population is one of the most under nutrient. What would you say? Nutrient deficient people in the world.
100%. I
Yeah.
agree with
They
that.
we have what is it?
Fast foods would be, if we got away from that and we went back to what we grew up on, maybe not even our generation, but before our generation, go back 2 generations, there wasn't a McDonald's running around. we
No.
were we were eating off the land, homesteading, like you talk on your channel about homesteading. That's the
Right.
way it's done. And
Yep, exactly.
go back to that. That's something we need to get back to. I don't mean to get us off the whole topic.
No. You're fine. You're fine. No, I agree, because you think about this. Americans, our magnesium levels are so bad,
Yeah,
that heart issues are on the rise. Been on the rise.
Yep.
But it's because our magnesium levels are low. Well, nobody tells you your magnesium levels are low. Our vitamin D levels are low. Nobody tells you our vitamin D levels are low.
Right.
There's things that we don't understand, we don't know, but then when we find out, then you start taking vitamin D supplements, magnesium supplements, you start feeling better. You don't have the anxiety or the heart palpitations or the fatigue in the middle of the day and all these different things that magnesium controls. So what I'm getting at is if it's controlling my body like this, and it's just a little old vitamin,
Yeah.
right, that we don't even think about,
Sure.
right? how much more important is that vitamin to that plant that has to produce it so that I can ingest it?
That's correct. And the thing is if you feed your plants correctly and you give them that, just imagine if you're growing it to feed your family and you know that you put in those trace minerals and micronutrients and you did it as clean and as fresh as you possibly could, the amount of nutrition you're going to get to feed your family, feed yourself, is bar none better than you can get from any store, because everything in stores are grown in, they're controlled environments.
Yep.
They don't get the same thing. They grow them, they get them developed, harvest as fast as they can so they can get the next crop in. So they
Right.
don't get the same stability, and that's why people try to buy organic, or you buy from these places here so you can maybe get something that's a little better for you, because the stores the flavors are washed out. But when you grow it on your own property and you take the time to give it those nutrients, you can tell a huge difference. I mean, it's
major difference.
Oh yeah, totally.
And I think that's probably one of the reasons why, is because it's so nutrient dense.
That's right.
And like for tomatoes, for example, you got a store-bought tomato and a garden tomato, and you put them side by side and blindfold you, and I cut the pieces and give them to you, you're going to be able to tell which one's which without ever having seen which I gave you, you know?
Oh,
and
absolutely.
so I think it's because it's more nutrient dense, and I think that's why it tastes so much better.
Oh, 100%. I completely agree with that. I mean, and like I said, it's for folks that are listening to us talk about this, I know it sounds like we're rambling, but when you get out there and you experience for yourself for the first time, if you're a first time gardener or even an experienced gardener, the experienced gardeners kind of know where we come from. But if you're a new time gardener, I'm telling you, you'll know the difference. Trust me. And if you haven't been excited about gardening, I tell you what, the older I get, the more excited I get about gardening. It just fuels the fire, whether you're growing giant or if you're just growing for your table. It's a lot of fun working with your hands. The physical work is gratitude. And when you've had a stressful day at work, go get
outside.
Play outside. There's
Yep.
too many of our kids nowadays. They get out and play outside a little bit, but they want to get on their video games. And
not like us.
Yeah, not like us.
Not like us.
No.
Yeah.
Right.
And Steve over at Hematite Homestead said, it's the same thing for eggs, pork, and beef, and he's right. Anything that's grown on the homestead is more nutrient dense and it's more flavorful, like 100%.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I agree with that. Wholeheartedly. We have chickens here. Now we don't eat rabbits. Nobody let me eat the rabbits, but I mean the chicken eggs. I mean we enjoy taking care of the chickens. My wife loves them. She won't even let me touch them. She said, "Those are my babies. I'll man the chickens." I said, "Okay, I'm sorry. I'll stay out of your way."
Right.
But anyways, everybody understands the point here, and so that's kind of my standpoint on gardening and stuff, and kind of how I feel about it and passionate.
Right. So let's go into how you grew those world records.
Oh, sure.
Vine, how you started the vine patterning, I want to go through that whole process.
Sure.
And kind of pick it apart a little bit, here and there. I mean, because it's interesting to know what you done, and how you done it, because both of those came off the same plant, correct?
Yeah, 100%. They both came off the plant. I know people say, yeah, right, whatever. He had a second plant stuck to it or something. I did not. Right. I took tons of pictures, and I had the county extension office come out because, I had done. And the funny thing was, and I want to start from the very beginning because I think it's important to know why I went after this. Okay. So last year this is 2023, 2022, I go to state fair. I have 2 watermelons. I grew a 129-pound watermelon and a 146-pound watermelon on the same plant. I did too. Cool. So, I mean, that's babies, but it's not bad for one plant.
That's still over 200 pounds on a watermelon plant when most of us couldn't grow 10 pounds of watermelon on one plant.
That's right. So anyways, I tell my wife, I says, you know what, this is kind of cool. And I remember when I was a kid, I wanted to go to the state fair. And I said, we hadn't done it in 20 years. She said, well, fine, and I had giant sunflower heads then. And so my garden space, just real quick, the garden space is about 4 years old. And so, anyways, it's 4 years old, third year into it. I was like, okay, things are starting to come together. I'm finally getting things right.
How big is it? How big is that area? Because it's not big,
So,
right?
no. So when I first did this, I didn't mean to put in as much money as I did. So I said, well, Grandma, it's her land. So my mother's land, she had a roll of pine trees, and they cut them down, and it had nothing but stumps there. And they finally got the stumps. We got the stumps up, and I asked her one day, I said, well, could I grow a garden? She said, well, sure, you can grow a garden if you want to. Well, I had a guy come with a stump grinder, try to grind out the stumps and get the roots out. And he was out there all day. I mean, did his best to get them out. And I still couldn't run a tiller through it. I was like, well, crap. I said, I ain't gonna be able to grow like this. So the only thing I
No.
knew, I had to go vertical. So I took,
Right.
so my neighbor down the street, he had a driver using a backhoe or whatever, So I went up to him one day and said, hey, he had a bunch of posts sticking around or hanging around there. So I said, hey, could I buy some posts and you drive them in the ground for him? I want to build a garden. So he said, sure. So he did. He drove them in the ground. So I measured out about, I think my garden's 68 feet wide and about 84 feet long. And so
Okay.
and then I came back and I used 2x12s or 2x8s. I used 2x8s. And so everybody thought I was building a hog pen from the road. So when you saw it, you see this big old thing squared off. So neighbors always ask, what are you doing, boy? You gonna put you some hogs or some horses in there? And I said, well, no, it's gonna be a so everybody was like, yeah, right. So everybody was, kind of funning with me and stuff. And so anyways, I started bringing in, and I did this raised bed, like I said, it's probably around 2,500 square feet, give or take. I might be off a little bit, but I made a 3-foot base organic matter purely. So I couldn't use the dirt was there. I went up. So I started calling around, getting prices for cow manure, chicken manure, leaf compost. And I had a guy from West Virginia. His name's Daniel. And Daniel started bringing me dump truck loads of the stuff. Now I don't have machinery. I did everything with a wheelbarrow and a shovel.
Yep.
So I did it the hard way, manual. Every summer I was out there bringing in more cow manure, like chicken manure. I tell you, I had the worst experience with chicken manure. And what the bad thing was is it was supposed to be aged chicken manure, and the chicken manure ended up being fresh right off the floor because they accidentally sold my batch. So the farmer came out from West Virginia, which gave my buddy Daniel. He said, well, here's your chicken manure. And I said, what is this? I said, it looks like talcum powder. He says, well, he accidentally sold the stuff you were supposed to get. So he scraped it off the floor. So I had this hot stuff. And it was so easy to spread out there. So I laid it on the top. I put it about 2 inches thick. Well, guess what I didn't do? What I didn't do is I didn't till it under. And guess what happened? It rained and it stank. And I brought every fly in the state of Virginia. I had 1 million flies. It looked like Ethiopia.
Hey, you know what? They could have filmed they could have filmed The Fly. Jeff Goldblum would have come down there. You'd have been filming on location now in Virginia. The Fly. That's funny.
I had bags. You get those fly bags. I fill up one a day. I had millions. It was the worst.
I can believe it.
Oh my God, it was the worst thing I ever did. But anyways, I don't mean to go that far. But so anyways, fast forward back to going to the watermelons, going to the state fair. I met Paul Jarsh. Great guy, great grower, and he's really getting into it. He's fairly new to this sport, and he's really come a long ways. But anyways, I showed up there with my watermelons, and obviously I felt embarrassed because when I took mine off the truck, mine was the smallest watermelon there, and I said, well, I feel pretty dumb right now because I met Hank Houston, fantastic grower, David Wells,
Right
a couple of phenomenal growers, and they
yes,
had
they are.
200 pounders, no problem. They do that in their sleep.
Yep.
And so, anyways, I saw this thing sitting on pillow cushions. And if you guys go back and look at Paul Jarsh's Butternut Squash, and I was looking around. I said, "What the heck is that thing over there on some pillow cushions?" I thought it was, some kind of special gourd or something.
Right.
And then, dude, Paul Jarsh with a world record Butternut Squash at 103 pounds. I was like, "What?" Butternut Squash is about 12 inches.
Right.
So the way off, I went up to Paul, said, hey, Paul. And he was up here in my area. So he's in Rixieville. So he's about 15 minutes from my house, give or take. So I went up to him, hey, I'll give you some of my seeds. I wanted to do some seed swap with you. He said, sure, I'll give you some butternuts. So he gave me a package of 3 or 4 seeds. And I told him, he came to my house. He brought him over to my house right after the weigh off, after everything dried and stuff. And I said, I appreciate it. And I switched it over to him. I said, Paul, I said, nothing against any growers out there, but my mission is to bring the world record back to your hard work that you did the 103, and I want to bring it back to Virginia. Nothing against nobody. I just wanted to see if I could do it. So I promised him, like in November, before his even growing season, that I was going to do it. And then meantime, meeting Hank Houston and David Wells and talking to them, and they kind of inspired me and kind of pushed me.
Right.
Or pushed me for watermelons, but the butternut was always kind of like, well, we'll see what happens.
Right.
I spent that whole fall building myself I call it a grow station. I built a grow station in my basement. And so I spent my whole fall doing that, made my irrigation systems and stuff that I wanted to use. So I spent the whole winter long down in the basement building stuff.
That's cool, man.
So anyway, springtime come around with those butternut squash and some other stuff. And I planted 3 seeds and had a spare seed. I planted them in little pots, put them in my grow station. And I tell you, I had one seedling that popped up in 24 hours. It went from seed to 2 leaves out in 24 hours.
Ain't that crazy?
The other 2 hadn't even sprouted yet. It took them another day. So I had this one, I was like, man, this plant's got some vigor. He wants to go. Right. So I gave the other 2 butternuts off to other people. Theirs flopped. They didn't do anything. And I
have a question just real quick.
Sure.
Do you remember when you planted them 3 seeds?
Sure.
If the one that took off and did really good, if it was fatter or maybe felt a little bit heavier than the other 2?
Well, and I know that you and Jason talked about seed weight. I think y'all did an episode on that.
Yeah.
So
just briefly touched on it.
Yeah. So one thing that I do with seeds, I've never done the weight, but I've always looked at seeds. I'm always looking for the bigger seed, the fatter seed, because I feel like there's more vigor in that seed than the flatter ones are.
Right.
And I got to giddy up and go, as I like to say.
Yep.
But there was no difference. I could not, because the seeds are not that big. You think for something that grew 100 pounds that the seeds would be like a field pumpkin.
Yeah, they're tiny. They're like the size of a penny or a dime.
Yeah, they're a little bitty guy. And so anyways, I didn't notice any difference in the seed. I mean, I do pay attention to that because I do believe there is something with that, because I've noticed it with pumpkin seeds. I've seen that with pumpkin seeds. But because of the size, I just couldn't notice it. But no, not really. It was just like, but if I don't see any difference in the seed itself, the next thing I look for are the first 2 leaves that pop up, because these leaves were bigger than the other 2.
Right.
So
the cotyledons.
Yeah, collen leaves are a little bit bigger. This one was bigger than the other 2. And so when I see the collen leaves, I've seen it on pumpkins do the same thing. I've had good experiences with that. And I said, okay, this one got bigger leaves. This one's shooting up faster. So now I said, this is going to be the seed, the plant that I'm going to go with. And I'm going one shot, and I don't know if it's a go or if it's going to be a dud. I don't know what's going to happen.
Right.
I use my gut instinct. So, and I use the, what's it called? Black Gold. It's called organic mix.
Yep.
The yellow and black bag. It's like 3 cubic feet
yards.
Okay, yeah. Anyways, you get it at Home Depot. So, and I really like that seed mix, and that's their soil mix. I mean, and that's what I started. And I just used silo cups. I started them in a little silo cup, hook a couple of holes in the bottom of them. And they didn't stay in there long, because I'm telling you, the roots were growing real fast. Yeah, they're shooting up, ready to go. So it was only under about a week. So what I did for every hole, I do sunflowers, watermelons, tomatoes, I always dig a hole 3 foot wide and 3 foot deep.
Yep.
I take all the soil out of it. And then what I do is I'll get cow manure. I'll take rabbit manure, a leaf compost mix. I put some bone meal in there. And then what else was it?
Blood meal?
Was that bone meal?
Putting blood meal?
Yeah, blood meal, bone meal, because I want the nitrogen, I want the phosphorus.
Yep.
Anything that does root development. And I tell you, this shirt here, Extreme Gardening, I know you're a big fan of them as well as I am. I swear by the mycorrhizin or the Makos that stuff is phenomenal.
Yes, it is.
and I use it on every single plant. And so once I get my soil mix in there and I backfill that hole and I'm getting ready to put the seedling out there, uh, what I do is with extreme gardening mycorrhizin mix is I'll take the seedling, flip it upside down, and I'll take the mycorrhizin. I'll actually make sure the soil is a little bit damp, and I will pack the roots with the
Right.
mycorrhizin all the way around there. And then I'll take the hole and I'll put 2 more cups in that hole and make sure that mycorrhizin is everywhere in that hole. So that thing is loaded with it. So when that plant finally gets acclimated, that thing will take off.
Right.
Now, one thing I will tell you, which was odd this year for me, is the seedling. When it started to go, I was expecting it to kind of, how you get a little plant shock where it'll kind of go dormant and not do anything because it's like, whoa, wait, where am I? Takes a
Right.
minute to get moving. This thing didn't do that. It kept on going. And and one thing that I did after it was put in the soil in that 3x3 area is I actually took white rocks and I put it around the base of the stump of the plant. Now, I don't know if it has anything to do with keeping the bugs away from it or it just happened to be a fluke, but I use white rocks to help push the bad bugs away because I think the bad bugs like squash bugs and things like that, they don't seem to want to because they can't blend in.
Right.
So I think they're confused and they won't come to the stump. They may hit somewhere else or land somewhere else, but I tried it on the watermelons. I tried it on watermelons and the butternut squash. I did it for all of those, and I didn't see any bugs at the stump. And if I did, it might have been an aphid, but that was about it. And it seemed like it helped.
Really?
Yeah. So
That is interesting.
I don't know. Maybe I'm just telling you that's what I did, and I
What
put the
now? White rock.
white rock, not
Now,
the
did you paint them white or you just?
no, the white rocks you get at Home Depot. You get the little bag.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, the white stones or whatever, little small white
Right.
stones. I put like about 2 foot around it, and I mounded up. And biggest, it's not. So that's one thing I think it is. It's a discussion we've had. I don't know if there's any truth to it. I don't know. Maybe it's a wise tale or whatever, but I tried it. So
Well, I do know that Chris Kent, whenever he plants his watermelon, Chris Kent, he takes pea gravel,
yeah,
and puts around the base of his around the stump of his watermelon plants, and I never could understand why he done that.
Well, and I'll tell you because here's one thing that I'll tell you: when the plant's young, right, the plant's still trying to get itself acclimated, and what I notice is if you keep your stump clean and healthy, you keep the dirt from splashing up off of it. You take away some of the things that can plague a plant, and that's you get the fungus in there, you get the wrong type of stuff that splashes up on the root, and then if you got some kind of I don't know, bug or something in there that bites it, but the ball of the stump is so dirty that you can't see
Right.
with it, and then you start scratching the dirty ways. Oh man, I got a rotten spot in my
Right.
body. So, but when you use rocks, whether it's pea gravel or white rocks, whatever you want to use, and when it rains and the water hits it and there's no dirt there, yeah, the water's gonna splash on the vine and it'll keep it clean, but you can always see what's going on with that stump. So keeping it clean is one of the key elements that I think that helps keep your plants strong and keeps them easier for you to see what you need to do to fix those situations. Like my watermelon stumps. I had a bad year of watermelons this year. I won't go into that, but I will. But I will tell you that the gravel around that really made a huge difference for that plant, and I could see what was going on. So when I instantly had a problem, I knew I could treat it and try to get it back on track. So that's
Right.
that's the one thing that I did. Now I did try some fabric. I'm not a big fan of the fabric, honestly. I got not the woven plastic fabric, but the I don't know. It's like felt. It's like a felt material. Water goes through it pretty easily. But they usually
Right.
use thinners and stuff. And I had a 12. I don't know what was it, 15 by 15 area. So I had put that around the plant, and I know a butternut squash is the same as a pumpkin essentially because we'll put down tap roots. So I was like, crap, I don't know if I want to do this, but I went ahead and did it. Now that was the weeds, and I really don't have weed problems because I matter. Use a lot of ground beans and leaf compost. But what I did is when I put the material down, what I also came back and did before the plant took off. Now this is something I did last year with my watermelons, and I will continue to do it. A lot of growers think it's risky, but I take everything that I cut out of my yard, all my grass clippings, everything goes right back into my garden.
I do that.
And what I do is I put it down 3 to 4 inches thick. I put it down 3 to 4 inches thick. And what happens is if you do it 3 to 4 inches thick, as far as you want to run that vine, before the vine gets to it, it gives a place for the plants to run. It keeps the grass out. It'll keep your moisture consistent. It will feed the plant because as the grass clippings are breaking down, they're putting the nutrients right back into the soil that is easy for your roots to get. And
I know that's a fact because in 2020, when I tried to grow store-bought Atlantic Giant seeds, I took all the grass clippings and kept running them down and letting the vine grow on top of them.
Yep.
And that plant that there was other plants there that didn't have it. That had that one plant, and that plant was massive, and it had a little old stump about that big for about the first 15 foot, 20 foot. And then after that, when it got in that grass the vine went to like this, just massive round. And I was like, holy cow. And then it started to swell out all the way back. It was, it was very cool. I got videos of that on Facebook.
Yeah. And that was something else. This thing actually got pretty fat too. If you'd seen the plant, you would have swore it was a pumpkin. It was the most gorgeous plant because it has white striations on the leaves. And some of my leaves were bigger than, like the trash cans you sit out there at the side of the road. They were big on top of that. They were the biggest damn leaves I ever seen on butternut squash.
That's crazy. Come in, 50-gallon trash can is that big around. You got a leaf that big. It's insane.
Yeah, I can see with Atlantic Giant, but not a butternut.
Right.
I was like, what the hell is this damn thing? I wasn't even sure if it was going to be a butternut the way it took off.
Right.
And the thing is, the feeding schedule. What I did so I have rain barrels. I use rain barrels to catch the water. I try not to use well water. I try to use all the water from the good Lord above whenever we're lucky to get it. Unfortunately, this summer did not work out the way I expected. I was expecting. I saw rain in June, and after June, it was a no-go.
Yeah.
So, anyways, I use the rain barrels. So what I do is I don't water my plants. I only feed my plants. And what I mean by some people say, well, I need to water them, it's dry. Well, what I do is I throw nutrients into my rain barrels, and what happens is, and the way it goes out of my rain barrels out to where my spots are, is I use a water hose. So I have 3/4 inch fitting coming out of my rain barrels, my 55-gallon drums, into a water hose, 5/8 hose, and then I have them hooked up to a PVC pipe that runs out to underneath because I don't like to foliar feed. I mean, I know a lot of people. I keep all of mine at the base because I don't want to have to fight powdery mildew throughout the summer months. I really want to try those leaves as healthy as I can. And when it rains, and if we get a lot of rain, then I'll go ahead and start treating them before I see powdery mildew come up. Because I tell you, if you keep your leaves are your solar panels of your plant. If you keep your leaves healthy, and you keep those leaves going, it's going to bring the energy. Because what happens is, and this just as well as I do, the roots gives you the nutrients from the soil to produce the leaves. And once the leaves come, then they put the energy back into the vine. So then you get the roots, the leaves, that help generate your flowers. And so between those two combinations, I had a gorgeous plant. Now this plant grew out to 25 feet. It was 25 feet long and 22 feet across, which is about the size. I mean, you had a discussion earlier about how big your plant was. So mine was a rough 550 square feet, and yours was about 600. But one thing that I did do, and I did some reading, and I don't know if you do this in your own patch for your pumpkins and stuff. So I had a female flower, that generates your butternut squash, first 5 foot of the plant. I had the seed in the ground, and 3 weeks later I had a butternut on there. But the funny thing was the female was there, and I had no male flowers. Like, son of a gun. So I planted it. It was I think I put it out May the 14th. And by June 1st, May 27th, I had my first butternut squash trying to form.
Right.
What the crap?
That
This
is
thing.
wow.
Yeah, it was super small. I mean, the plant wasn't small, but
Is that the one that ended up growing and it was in a weird spot and you were trying to figure out like the vine and all that?
are you talking about I had a 10-pounder that I pulled out from under the stump? Or
Yeah, maybe that's what it was. Yeah.
yeah, that happened later, and I'll get into that story. But
Okay.
so anyways, I called Paul. So, hey, Paul, you got any butternut? Because I know he was talking about having a butternut squash maybe. He said, no, man. I said, I don't even have any flowers coming out yet. So, well, this thing's already trying to put out. So I'm already panicking because my watermelons are not looking great. I'm having a piss poor time trying to get the watermelons. The watermelons was what I was going for because I wanted to grow a 200-pound watermelon, and things were just I got
Right.
awful. So I was like, well, I guess it just ain't meant to be. So let me just focus on this butternut. So, anyways, this thing kept going. So, it kept on female flowers everywhere, and all these male flowers are coming up, and they would get up about, I don't know, 2 foot tall, and they wouldn't open. I probably had 40 or 50 male flowers at 10, like a 10 by 15 area. None of them were opening. Here we are. We're at the end of June.
Weird.
No female flowers. I already busted off like 20 female flowers off the main, off the secondaries. And I was like, this sucks. I said, I kept texting Paul, said, hey, Paul, man, I said, the male flowers ain't open. He said, man, don't worry. He said, wait until July 1st. He said, you'll be fine. I said, okay. So lo and behold, July 1st shows up. Bam. Female flowers. All of a sudden, all the male flowers open at the same time. So
Yep.
I was going out there every day before work checking the plant. I said, come on, flowers, open up. Let's go. And so July 7th, I go out there, all these beautiful male flowers. They were huge. The female flower, I saw it on a secondary, and that's
Right.
where the 124.6 first butternut that I took to Craigsville. That's where this one comes into play. Now the main had already gone out about 7 feet, and the secondary it was already out to another 6 foot. So we're roughly 13 down the main. And so anyways, I got it pollinated. I said, great, this thing's pollinated. And I took a piece of twine to close up the flower to control that pollination because I didn't want no contamination or whatever.
Right.
And so I tried to tie it, and the flower's the size of a dinner plate. It was big as a daggum dinner plate. It's the biggest flower I'd ever seen especially a butternut, I said,
right.
Damn, huge. Put a bag on. I had a bag on there, and the thing, when I came home, the thing had popped open. It sprung open. It just had so much vigor in that flower. I said, this thing is bananas, And 3 days later, man, that thing just took off. I mean, this thing went, like we were talking how fast you grew yours when you did your 80 pounder, how fast it took off. This thing did the same thing. It was growing, and I have a tracker, and I should have brought my tracker to my desk to tell you a little bit about it. But at one point, it was putting on about 7 to 8 pounds about every 3 to 4 days.
That's good.
It was crazy aggressive, and that one I grew it to the 124.6 pounds in 62 days. And
62 days.
Yeah, 62 days. It just
124.6.
Yeah. Yep.
That's crazy.
Yeah. So I mean, I think yours was probably going at a faster rate than maybe even mine was, but
that's an average of 2 pounds 0.00967742 a day. So almost like 2 pounds 1 ounce a day. Like I'm sure there was a growth curve and there was more. That's over a 62-day period. That would have been an average of 2 pounds a day. I mean, you think about that. That's literally, it was growing literally the size of a butternut, a store butternut every day.
Yeah.
I mean, literally, that's what it was. Every day it was growing a butternut that you would buy at the store.
And based on the measurements, just so you know, so at day 40, at day 41 or 42, it was over 100 pounds at day 40 or 42. And
That's crazy.
It was only, like I said, the last 20 days I was milking it along, and I was going to 0.5, 0.6. I said, this damn thing stopped growing on me. It just like, I'm done. I did what I'm going to do. But but the thing is, so that was that one. That was on a secondary. Now this is on a secondary vine. But what I and I'm sorry, I didn't mean to jump around on you here, but
No, you're fine. You're fine.
but what I ended up doing was is after I found that one, I started cutting all of the flowers off of it.
Right.
So every male flower off, I cut every female flower off. I only kept it to the main and secondaries, and that's all I had. So I had a main and a secondary. In the tertiaries, I would absolutely not let them come on at all. I would cut those before they even got started, and I
Right.
was calling, I don't know, 7 or 8 every day, the little butternuts. And anyways, I did see one flower that came on the main, and that was at I don't know, 20 feet down on the vine, and that's where the world record, the 131, came into play. And I seen it starting to develop. I said, okay, I'm gonna let a few male flowers go because I want one on the main. I want to see what'll happen.
Right.
So, anyways, I already had one sitting, close to 100 pounds, and then the 131 came in, and it took off like a rocket because you had all these secondaries that had nothing on them, so all the food was gravitating to that one giant
Yeah.
butter. So, anyways, I mean that's kind of how it kind of went for me, and I kept it
Yep.
covered. Off
How old was that butternut?
that butternut was 2 weeks behind. 2 weeks behind. So that one came in at July. That one set July the 15th. So we had
Okay.
one, and on the 15th was when the next one set. So two weeks later, or
Okay.
no, a week later.
All right. And then how many days old was it when you pulled it in? You remember
So
that?
yeah. So the first one was at 62 days.
64. You said 60.
Yeah,
Yeah.
64. 4 days on the first one. Second one was I think I pulled it at day 62. So
Okay.
day 62, is actually bigger. It grew bigger and faster because it was on the main, and the secondary had already slowed down, so it was getting the energy that the other one wasn't taking anymore. But
Cool.
one mistake I will tell you that I did make, and I wish I hadn't have done it, is this thing had a little stem, and I'm not joking it, that fed in from the vine butternut, and it was only about 2 inches long. That's as big as it was. I was
Right.
like, the head kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger. I said, this ain't gonna break off. But I left the vine, where past that stem, I let it keep going because I was trying to get as much energy, the back
Right.
front energy. But what ended up happening is started to develop a crack because there's so much stress on the vine. So I was like, crap, maybe I should cut it. So I ended up cutting it. But then I think what happened is I think I actually stunted the growth because it seems like as soon as I did that, the butternut slowed down. It was like either you should have cut it sooner, like when it was a little baby,
Or left it alone.
or left it alone. And I think I might have sealed my fate. I think if I had not have done it and just let it say, well, see what happens, I
Right.
think he would have been over 130 pounds too. And I did the same thing on the 131. I think that one could have hit 150. So
Well, here, let me give you some stats right here. So this one at day 30, at day 62, it was growing 2 pounds, 1.129032, almost 1.5, I guess, ounces. All right. So it'd have been 2 pounds, 1.5 ounces that it was growing every day. All
sure,
right. So, that's pretty cool. Now, my butternut was because I just did this while you were talking. So
sure,
um it was growing 2 pounds, 1.8684211. So almost 2 ounces a day, right? So 2 pounds, 2 ounces. And if you would have took that to day 64, it could have potentially had
sure.
been like 139.957.
Yeah.
All right. So you and me was in that same ballpark.
Yes. Yeah. And that's,
But the difference though was you had 2 of them growing on the plant at one time.
yeah, at the same
So can
time.
you imagine all that power going into that last fruit?
Yes.
I mean,
It's hard to,
you could have been well over 3 pounds a day.
you want to know how much fertilizer I was pumping into this thing? Because I already done cut back to nitrogen. I was working on the potassium and the phosphorus. You're gonna think I'm crazy. It's all liquid now. I didn't do granules. I did one time. I threw some dry granules because the ground was a little wet. So I
Right.
went. I always alternate. So if it's wet, I throw dry. If it's dry, I go wet.
Right.
So I was giving it 45 gallons of fertilizer every 4 to 5 days.
I can believe that.
The whole freaking plant. The whole plant was getting that much fertilizer. I was using Jack's fertilizer. I used a lot of that one. I have another one down in the basement. I can't remember the name of it. It was something from last year I had. So I was trying to burn up some stuff I had last year, but they were high on the last two numbers. You just cut that
Right.
nitrogen, just focus on your flowers and focus on your fruit.
Right.
45 gallons, man. That thing was sucking it up like it was no big deal.
Yeah, that's incredible. I mean, that's absolutely incredible.
And the growth rate of the vines, I don't know how yours were growing. Mine were putting on 3 foot a day. I was getting 3 foot growth rates a day.
I was getting pretty good growth, but you got to think it was literally from the big. It's kind of hard to tell now because I've got the chickens and all, down there. It kind of looks different than what it did in 2021 now. But where my apple tree is in the yard, it was setting right there in that corner. Right there in the corner where my state record field pumpkin was grown at this year.
Sure.
It was right there in that corner. Come down to the apple tree and down in the yard that way, and I was getting close to the pigs, so I terminated the main.
Sure.
And then I kind of let some of the secondaries come out. Yep. Got a little bit of growth there, but we were so close. I pollinated it at September 24th.
Okay. That's great.
And it grew into October 30th. So, I mean, wow. It was, we were coming up on the end. So the plant growth really wasn't much. And I think that kind of helped because the plant was shutting down. There was no other fruit on there. And it was saying, I got to get my kids out. I got to produce my kids. So it was trying to push that to get them seeds fulfilled and
meet the purpose
of that progeny.
Yeah.
So I really think that's the only reason why mine grown, so fast at the end.
Yeah, because it was trying to do what it's supposed to do, and that's to bear fruit and to have seeds for the next coming season. So
right.
I totally believe that. Now, I tell you, I did have problems with my leaves. My leaves started dying off. Like both of my butternuts, I don't know what happened. I think I did get into a moisture issue because my ground started getting compacted because me walking in there, I don't like walking in there. I was actually walking barefooted in my garden.
Right.
I was walking barefoot because I was saying, well, I've got the grass clippings, but the grass clippings, everything was compacting. So it was packing, and then the moisture that was staying on the surface where the roots were, and I started getting root rot, I believe, because the leaves started turning yellow on me, and I was like, oh, crap. If my leaves are yellow, then I'm starting to lose energy to go to the fruit. So between me, I'm just looking at the mistakes that I made, and mistakes will kill you every time. And I can't complain.
Oh, yeah.
I had a phenomenal year. So what more could I ask for? But at the same token, I say, if I could have done things different, here's what I would have done differently. But, and the thing is to tell folks is if you keep your soil loamy soil, and that's one thing I'm working this year is I'm going to expand. I'm at soil this coming a year, and I got to put 10 yards out there because my leaf compost is already broken down to about as far as it's going to go, and it's starting to get harder. So I'm going to add the sand in there to help give it, aeration. So those roots can this coming season. So, but anyways, if you keep your soil compaction out of your soil, I think you can more. And one thing else I did that I don't want to forget to tell you is I was using the stuff, and I gave you a sample at the state fair, was the Photosynthesis Plus.
Yep.
Now, I'm a believer after this year. I never used it up until this year, and I found it at a hydroponics store, and a place where you get stuff if you want to do marijuana or whatever.
Right. They always got the best stuff. I mean, they just do, right? You can't really.
And the thing is one thing I will give them mad respect is they've done the research and they grow their plants as pure and clean as they can. But the fertilizer, the Photosynthesis Plus, which is Micro Bee Life hydroponics, a great group of people. I've actually talked to the owner and stuff. They're good people. But I used it on my watermelon plant as an example because I was like, well, hell, watermelon's going to be my guinea pig. And I tried it on that one. It was 2 ounce to 5 gallon ratio. So 2 ounces to 5 gallons. I did it in a 45 gallon drum. I gave it 20 gallons of water to the watermelon plant. That plant in 72 hours, it tripled in size in 72 hours. Now I had been
crazy.
I gave every plant the exact same thing. I said, well, damn, if it worked like that on watermelon, what's it going to do to my tomatoes and my butternut squash? So I added it to my butternut squash, and I think that also contributed to not just my fertilizer, but also helped because what the photosynthesis done. I don't know if you've done any reading about them or not, but what it does is it plant to take in like sunlight is in the micronutrients. It helps the nutrients be available, and you can feed it at the roots or you can feed it on the leaves, and it goes into that plant and allows the
Right.
plant everything around it. So for me, that was one of the things that I just made up part of my regiment. So I would actually add the microbe life photosynthesis into my fertilizer. So I do because you can mix the fertilizer and this stuff together, and they
Right.
work just fine. So I didn't have any bad effects from it. So that was another thing that I also done to get this plant as big as I did. And like I said, pruning is another key factor. And the butternut that I had posted where it looked like it was shaped like this sideways, it was all funky. That
Right.
I don't know how that thing happened because there's no male flowers, and somehow, some way, it grew a butternut underneath the stump where the gravel was. It was
Right.
literally, and I would go out every 3 days to go check the stump because it was putting on so much growth. It was like a ball like this big, and I keep cutting the growth off like a tree trunk. It wouldn't stop. Anyways, I look one day. I'm like, what the hell? What is that down in the gravel? And I was like, you gotta be kidding me. And so I said, well, shit, where's the stem of this thing go? Because I couldn't find it. And so I'm using, trying to feel around because I don't want to cut the wrong thing. And I was like, oh, I think stem. So I cut it and I finally unburied it. I was like, what the hell is like this big around, this big old blob? I put it on a scale, weighed 10.2 pounds at the stump. I was like, mother, this thing is taking nutrients from my other two that I'm trying to get big.
Right.
But it did 10 pounds in like 3 or 4 days.
That's crazy. That is
This
crazy.
this plant was bananas. And for David Wells and Hank Houston, I learned a lot. Guys are kind of a mentor, and I always talked about the way Mr. Wells always used to say, he says, you go from a hero to a zero real fast in the garden industry. So one minute I felt like a big fat zero, and then next minute I became a hero.
Yep.
So I don't know.
That's a fact.
Anyways, I wanted RC. I really appreciate everything you do for the growing community, the homesteading that you do to try to get people aware and stuff. I like what you bring to the table to get people aware and get them excited about what you do. So
I try, man. I try.
honored to be on your channel. Really appreciate you having me on here, and I didn't mean to ramble too much with you.
No, man. No, I still got a couple questions if you got time.
I'm not hurting on time.
Yeah. So, what do you think was? And thank you, by the way. I appreciate those kind words, man, because I do try to get people excited. I do try to get people involved. I love gardening. It's fun for me, and that's what I like to keep it. I like to keep it fun. I like to keep it funky and fun. That's why I grow all the different things I've grown. I've been told by numerous growers, if you knock off the jackassery and quit growing all these weird things, you probably grow a heck of a pumpkin. But I don't think people get it as that much. Yes, I might be able to. I mean, I don't know. Maybe, right? Maybe I get this. Maybe I don't grow everything and I grow the same size pumpkin. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah.
But for me, it's not a challenge. It's not fun as for me to compete against everybody else.
Right.
I like to have things that are a challenge for myself and compete against myself. That's what I have fun doing. I don't, so I think people misunderstand me because sometimes, I'm not, not competing against them, and they're like, what's your deal, or whatever. And I have a competitive nature and a competitive side, but it's not to the point that some guys are about it, And so if I don't win, I'm just like, okay, if I lose, it's okay. Or if I don't get a record, it's okay. I just try again until I get it. That's just what I do. So,
It's grit and determination in your nature. That's who you are. That's what you're about. And it does. It takes hard work. This doesn't come easy. If anybody thinks that you just plan on seeing and walk away and it's going to be a world record or state record or even just big, it doesn't happen like that. You got to pay attention to what your plants are doing. So I'm telling you, I was out there every single day. You can ask my wife. I probably thought we were divorced at one point because I was spent probably more time in the garden than I did with my family. And that's not a good thing to say. I'm just saying that's how it went down, sort of. But she knew. She says, if I give you this much time in the garden, you better do something big. So
right.
I did. I really tried this year. I try every year, but this year I really put extra special time. And I said, well, honey, I said, give me patience. Let me get through the growing season. Things will simmer down eventually. I said, I'm gonna do something here. I don't know what it's going to be. And I'm, good Lord above has given me an opportunity and I want to take full advantage of it. So I can't do it without my wife's support, my kids, good Lord, Mother Nature, all of those things. Those are all combinations to making this successful grower. So everybody
You're
knows
absolutely right.
it's teamwork. So you better give credit to your wife and your kids because they
Yep.
do a lot.
They do a lot. It's not just us. There's people behind the scenes, behind the cameras.
Yeah.
The statement has never been truer. Behind every good man is a great woman. Or behind every I think it's backwards. Behind every great man is a good woman, but it's probably really the other way around. Behind every good man is a great woman. Because technically, if you ain't got a good one, man, we make these women our widows. For 6 months out of the year, pretty much. And, we go out there and we give them pumpkins and other things more attention than we pay them.
Right.
And so, but, we got this working thing here. It's been pretty good the past 3 years.
Yeah.
You leave me alone in the summer, I take you to the beach in the fall. How about that? And everybody's game for that, So it works out pretty good. But I got a couple questions real quick. And it kind of falls in line with this this person that's watching here. So Christine says, thanks for having this discussion. She's going to try to grow a butternut for the first time in 2024. And so some of my questions was geared towards that. What do you think was one of the main things that you can attribute to having a good season and growing a world record?
Well, it goes to, I have to give it to the fundamentals of, getting your dirt right. So you need a good soil sample. So I use Waypoint Analytics, right? So my soil was not virgin soil. I built mine up. So mine's a raised bed. Mine's a 2,500 square foot raised bed. So everything I did was like in my own head, the way I grew up gardening was soil preparation. So I knew I wanted really rich soil. I knew that I needed to make sure that these plants had everything that they could possibly need. So knowing that I didn't use the virgin soil that was there and what the minerals are already there, I had to think about, well, if I didn't use that, I'm going to have to figure a way to get it all in there. So like azomite, I use azomite as a trace mineral. It's mined in Nevada. So I had to trace minerals throughout the whole garden. I wanted to make sure I had everything that might be lacking in my cow manure or my leaf compost. And so I started thinking kind of like that. That was kind of my mythology about the soil. And then, after talking, Davis and Hank about the soil, he says, you got to do a soil sample to know where you're at because you need to know what your baseline is. Once you get fine, then you start to learn what your plants are going to need from that starting point. So, for Christine out there, that if she's still listening to us here, that I would tell her first, you want to get your soil tested. Make sure that your soil is we want sandy, loamy soil is what we typically like to grow in. I mean, I think that's generally for most plants because a sandy, loamy soil allows the moisture to travel to the roots. It allows the roots to keep going and looking for more food. It also gets the fertilizer down there. So if you keep that soil nice and fluffy, that fluffy stuff is what your plants really want because you're getting the CO2 levels. If you have organic matter, your CO2 levels are high, but you're also getting the oxygen that your roots need too. So you need to get all elements just right, get the right blend. So, and not trying to get too techy or science behind it, but that's what I do is to be able to get those components.
Yeah. So you broke up on that last little bit there.
Which part did I lose you at?
So you were talking about, you're having the CO2 and the oxygen levels in the soil, and it just kind of broke off right there.
CO2 and the oxygen, and the also to the organic matter, which if you have the organic matter, which is your fertilizer, so you need that fertilizer. It's like three components there that kind of come together. It gives that plant the fire and the vigor that it needs, and you got to keep maintaining. You want to maintain what your plant is getting from the ground to the time it fruit. So your phosphorus level will start to fall off. Your potassium will fall off if you don't maintain that through the season, because those are your two big components for getting the size of the fruit. I don't know if you disagree with that statement or not, but
no, I don't disagree with that at all. I mean, it has phosphorus. Right. I mean, phosphorus, the way I do it is, my soil's jacked in phosphorus, so I don't feed phosphorus at all.
Yeah, you probably don't need.
No, I don't need to. It's jacked. I got it. I got a little bit too high. So I do pretty good, with what I got. I mean, some of these I got 400s. It's ppm sitting in my soil of phosphorus. So, but I don't feed any phosphorus. But what I do is I really jack my potassium up throughout the final part of the growing season. And do pretty well that way. I mean, phosphorus and potassium are two big proponents to growing big fruit.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, actually, if we was to go, and I know we're running out of time here, but if we was to look at my soil results in the spring when I took the first to look at it before I planted it, and looked at my fall results are better than my spring results. As a matter of fact,
really?
when I sent it to Waypoint Analytics. He sent it to them, and I samples just the way I did it from the same spots I grew in. And they sent it back and said, "Yeah, you don't need to do anything. Everything looks great." He said, "You don't need to touch a thing." I'm like, "What?" But that was because I was feeding it pretty much the things that I knew it was going to take from the soil, so I was in the balance. And
right.
I actually jacked my potassium and my phosphorus up. They're off the chart.
And that's what you want, though. You want to try to have that balance throughout the growth season, because keeping it balanced, when things get out of balance, that's when the plant and the fruit start to diminish in some way, shape, or form. Right. But when you're keeping that balance going, that's what keeps you healthy. You got a good vigor, you got good growth in your fruit, and everything's working together, and it's doing good. And so but trying to maintain that when you're a new grower or even a veteran grower is hard, because you either have to do a soil test in the middle of season sometimes, or a tissue test to try to figure out where you're at. But you did good because you didn't have to do those tests.
No, I didn't. And I'll tell you, RC, I know you we grew up a lot of the same lines, right? So when you were younger, I don't know about technology. I know I didn't have any. So everything we did was basically we go down there, we till up the soil, grab it by our hands, and kind of feel what it feels like. I went by feel. That doesn't make sense to me. I was like, well, how the hell can you feel calcium, or how can you feel this, or how can you feel that? You can't. But what I do know is putting organic matter into your soil, you can take a lot of those elements off the table if you keep adding organic. Because what you put in it is what you're going to get of it. Right. You don't into it every year. You're going to go.
Right. Exactly. I mean, let's think about this. Drive by any piece of wooded area.
Yep.
There's nobody out there actively fertilizing any of that.
Yep.
It's organic matter that it feeds itself every year. When the leaves fall to the bottom, it feeds itself. There is mycelium under there. So mycos, right?
Yep.
Mycorrhiza, mycelium is under there, growing and actively spreading along all those leaves, turning it into nutrients for the plant to absorb and take up. And that soil is rich in both mycelium, vitamins, microbes, nutrients, and all that stuff. That's why you can plant blackberries out in the woods, and they'll do 10 times better in the woods than they will in your front yard.
And I'll tell you something else I added that I have not talked about. I go to Starbucks and Dunkin' Donuts. I haven't been to Dunkin' Donuts in a while, but I promise you, I'm not exaggerating when I say this. I have literally put a dump truck of coffee grounds between Grandma's flower beds and my garden. I put at least one dump truck load in my garden.
I can believe that.
And the reason why I say this is a key element. Now you can do reading. There's a lot of mixed emotions about coffee grounds. Some say, "Oh no, don't add that to your soil. It's terrible." And then you add, "Oh yeah."
I've always done good with it.
Yeah, but what I can tell you, and I'm sure you've done a lot of research. I know you do a lot of research. With coffee grounds, you know it goes through different phases as it breaks down. It starts out as a nitrogen feeder, right? After pounds, but it also turns into trace minerals after it's kind of gone through the
stages.
Yeah, different stages. But what it brings in is your earthworms, and when you bring in earthworms, guess what? I can take it back.
Worm castings.
Yeah, you get worm castings. Bingo.
And aeration.
Yeah, it aerates the soil. And I can tell you in the springtime, I could take a bag of coffee grounds straight from Starbucks, sit it on the ground, don't do nothing, let it sit there for a week. The moisture gets there, and when I pick it up, there's over 1 million. I'm not joking. Probably at least 1 million earthworms under that bag. The whole bottom of the bag is covered. They're trying to get in there. And what the earthworms are doing, and I even researched earthworms while they like coffee grounds, it actually goes in their gizzard. There's that fat part of the It helps them digest the dirt that they're running through. So it helps clean them out. And that's what we get the worm castings from. But the coffee grounds help them do that. But
that's cool.
Anyways.
That's very cool. I didn't know that. See, so what I did this year is I did a little experiment. So I've got a ton of earthworms in my yard. I've got videos that are on TikTok. I got videos still on my phone. Literally just last week when it started raining, I went out. It was 40 degrees at night. I went out and started videoing, and I went out there to go get something, and I had my headlamp on. It was really, really bright headlamp, and you start going, you see all of them ducking back in the ground, right? So I take the phone out and I start videoing, and you can see it looks like the ground crawling. We're in December, and it's doing that, right? And I'm like, holy cow, that's crazy. I have got, for clay type soil, rocky clay, whatever that shell, I got a lot of shell.
Sure.
For that kind of soil, I've got a ton of worms. I mean, tons. It's nothing for me to get that many and see that many all the time. And obviously in December still. So I was trying to figure out, if I've got that many worms, there's got to be a bunch of worm castings, because they're not, you know what I mean? Like, why is my soil so poor, but I got that many worms? You know what I mean? And so, go ahead.
I was going to say, though, if you have them all in your yard, so it was funny. I had a friend come over and give me a hand one day. Say, "Hey man, can I take some worms from your property and put them on my garden?" I said, "You can, but you don't have to do that." "Well, what do you mean?" I said, "Go get you a bag of coffee grounds, use coffee grounds, and sit them in the ground, sit them in a spot. What happens? Let it sit there for a couple of weeks and see if an earthworm don't." I'm telling you, if you I don't know if you add coffee grounds to your soil or how you feel about that or not, but if you would earthworms would gravitate to your garden.
That's what I was going to tell you. So I always put the coffee grounds in the soil or out in the garden in the summertime. Now in the wintertime, I put it in the compost pile. Summertime, I put it out in the garden. I'll put it around plants and all that stuff, right?
Sure.
I've never had any negative effects of it. No. So last year, I seen this thing for raised beds. And it was a composter that went in the raised bed, little box went in the raised bed, had holes where worms that you took out of the ground or out of your worm bin or whatever you got, and put them inside your raised bed.
Okay.
Now you've got this little compost box, little 9-inch by 9-inch box by 13, 14 inches long.
Sure.
And it's got holes in it that these worms can go in there and actively eat the compost. Now you're composting inside your raised bed. They're making worm castings and everything. They're eating all that, breaking it down. You take and dump it out and then move your box to another location. You just keep doing it inside that raised bed. So I thought of it on a bigger scale.
Sure.
I said, okay, well, if they can do it in a raised bed, and I've got all these worms in my yard that I know's in my yard, I'll just do it in my garden, in my main pumpkin patch, and see what happens. Right. So I made these 15-inch long PVC pipes with holes in them, about 1/4 inch to 1/2 inch holes, and I think they were like 3/8 inch. I think is what they were, and
Uh,
put a whole bunch of holes all the way around it and in through it. Put a cap on one end, cap on the other. One cap's buried, and the other cap is above ground. Pull the cap off. Dump composting materials, coffee grounds, peelings off of bananas and stuff like that. Whatever and just kept it full all summer, and kept them worms. And what I would do is I would have different bins with different things through the patch. And so if the worms got tired of one thing, they went over here to another place to get the rest, something else. Right. And they were just traveling back and forth. Now, I can't prove that they were traveling back and forth, but if you research, worms only eat this, that, and the other. And then sometimes they'll move on to find something else that they desire. Right. So if they're doing that traveling, then they're aerating my patch.
Right. Well, so I had an experience up in Maryland. Have you ever used mushroom soil?
I've heard a lot of good stuff about mushroom compost, but I've never used it.
Okay, so I added mushroom soil. I was up in Maryland, first tried to garden before I met my wife. That's when we were still dating. I hadn't moved to Virginia yet. So my boss up there in Maryland, I had a little small garden. He said, "Yeah, you can grow a pumpkin," and I grew some huge cabbage heads. I mean, 25-pound cabbage heads.
That's a big cabbage.
Yeah, that's pretty big. And my tomato plants were 27 feet tall. That's tall, and I was just playing around with it. And
right.
Anyways, but I had added the mushroom soil, but at nighttime, because I added I think I put 2 truckloads in it or whatever, because I never used mushroom soil. I'll see what this is about. Because all it is it's horse manure. Basically, the mushrooms have used up all the nutrients that a mushroom needs.
Right.
And so you just have the waste material. So that's where you get the mushroom soil from. So it's really, I can't remember the pH, and I have to go back to my logs and go look at that. But anyways, what I noticed at nighttime when you turn the lights on, I had these, I'm not night crawlers. The night crawlers, those things are probably 8 inches. They were probably 8 inches, and they were crawling across. They weren't going through the ground. They were crawling across the top.
Right.
And I don't know if the mushroom soil brought them in there, but I was like, I've never seen them. They were turn the lights on. There must be 100 of them crawling across the surface, going to the cabbage heads or going over here. But they were as big around as your pinky. I mean,
yep. That's what we got here. That's what these are out here. I guess they're night crawlers because we got little red wigglers, but the majority of what you see out here is just big old fat long night crawlers. Some of them looks like a snake sometimes. And it's like what, but I think that compost, anything that's decaying and dead, that's what they want to go to. That's what they're going to eat. And so. I don't know whether I had in my mind, I was like, I'm going to attract all these from all across this whole great big field here, the neighbor's yard, my yard. And I'm going to have all these worms coming in here to my pumpkin patch, and eating, I don't know how many I had there, but I do know that even though my soil compacted some this summer, like normal, right. The plants didn't seem to suffer as much as they usually do, right? So there must have not been suffocation going on at the roots like normal. So again, I can't prove any of that because how do you prove it? But it seemed to work.
Yeah, I have something I wanted to throw at you as something to think about. I had this conversation, I think it was with Mr. Davis. I was actually talking to him today. We check on each other periodically just to say, hey, man, how's it going? Anyway, I had a really cool conversation. It got me to thinking. We were talking about uptake to the plants, right? So my angle on plant uptake, I don't know if you've thought of this yourself, but if you was able, because, sometimes your nutrients get locked up, right? Like your phosphorus can get locked up.
Yep.
You don't have the right? So you get something locked up that the plant can't access, action or whatever the situation may be. But if you could keep things unlocked, keep all your nutrients across the board that your plants need, you could keep them unlocked and keep readily available at all times. I often would wonder, how much can a plant uptake, phosphorus take in the season, how much can it take and exceed a normal growth rate into a higher growth rate? Could we push a pumpkin to 4,000 pounds? Could we push a butternut to 500 pounds if you could keep things unlocked and keep keep aggressively feeding it without blowing the plant up?
So here's my theory on this. I think a plant can only uptake so much every day. It's only going to uptake what it needs. It won't uptake any more than what it needs, right? And so I think a lot of times, though, we don't understand that.
Yes.
And I think we go, well, we got to feed, and shove this feed at it. And it doesn't really need what we're feeding it. You know what I mean? And this is just a theory because I've thought about it quite a bit, this year, kind of watching everything the way it was. And so what I think is while we're feeding micro doses, these little spoon feeding it, if you will,
sure.
I think we're trying to give it what it needs and keep that balance. You know what I mean? And then it just takes whatever it wants because it's there, available and ready to take what it wants.
Sure.
But I don't think that a plant is ever going to just suck up and push what it don't need. So here's an example. Let's say that your butternut is doing 3 pounds a day.
Sure.
It's pumping, cranking. And you're doing micro doses every day, right? And you're feeding it every day. And it stays on that steady track. I don't believe if you went out there and double fed that day that you would increase it to 3.5 or 4 pounds.
Right.
You know what I mean? I think the plant, like, as long as the butternut is just growing at 3 pounds, and the plant's got everything it needs to grow at 3 pounds, that's good. Now, if there's a hormone that's in there that kicks in and says, I want you to grow 4.5 pounds a day. You know what I mean? Then the plant says, I need more of whatever it is.
Right.
Right. And so then if you were feeding this dose, it might not be enough because the hormone kicked in to tell the plant to push that butternut faster, bigger, quicker, whatever.
Yeah.
And the nutrient might not be there to obtain that much. You're used to feeding it, whatever, and it needed a little bit more to keep on going. So I think what we have to do is we need to understand the growth curve of these things, the timing of the hormones, when the hormones are kicking in, maybe even what hormones to give to make the growth curve further, right? Anything like that. And then once we figure out that part, I think then we'll be able to understand, okay, well, at this stage of the game, week 1 through 2 or 3, whatever, I can feed this much because it's only going to grow at this rate. But once we get to week 2 or 3 and it kicks up and this hormone kicks in to push it faster and harder, then I can up my dose, to whatever amount that is. But I think that's what we're going to end up finding out is something like that. I really, and I could be totally wrong. This is just my opinion, but I really don't.
On to something, honestly. I really think you're on. I said, I think you're on to something. I really believe that, a growth hormone is probably what the plant needs. It's not the nutrient much, but that tells it needs more. And
right.
But the also too is the expansion. If a plant can has a hormone that would increase it, there's other things, calculations is like, well, how do we keep it from blowing the vine, or how do we keep from blowing the fruit if we get in the nutrients? Is it calcium that will prevent that, or is it this will prevent that?
Right.
Also that factor too.
Well, and so like I blew 2 of my mains this year. So the 958 I blew, and then I blew the 717. It was a 1533 reed. So I blew those 2 mains on those. One blew late in the year, one blew early in the year. I still on that 958, it still produced 1,977 pounds of pumpkin. I mean, actually more than that, because if you go back and watch all the videos, so it produced a 602 at 11% heavy, 825 at 22% heavy, 150 pounder, 100 pounder, and then that last one at 300 pound that just grew out of nowhere. So that's 1,977 pounds Plus, I was pulling calls off of that thing anywhere between 5 and 15 pounds all summer long, probably 20 to 30 of those. So it grew probably over 2,000 pounds of pumpkin on that plant. If I could have just harnessed that into one, that'd have been great. But I blew the main early, and the reason why I blew it is because I tried to push it because it was growing, it was doing its thing, and I get frustrated sometimes, and I don't just sit back and wait another week or two for it to sort itself out. I'll go out there and say, all right, you don't want to grow? I'll make you grow. And I went out there and I slammed it with some sort of nitrogen. I can't remember if it was calcium nitrate or ammonium nitrate or something of the sort. I know or it might have been urea. I slammed it with one of the three, and I don't remember which one. And about 3 days later, we got a tremendous amount of rain that we wasn't supposed to get for like a whole day. It just, and then the next day I went out there and my pumpkin didn't grow that much. I'm like, why didn't it grow? And I start looking around. I'm trying to figure it out. And on the backside, I see the vine about 2 foot from the stump started separating. And I blew the main. And then it just started getting worse and worse. And so I started contacting people, Derek Ruthruff, Rick Jolovic. And, Rick said, it's done. It's over. 1, 2, 3, you're out, man. Pull the plant. And I'm like, I was like, you don't think it'll grow? He's like, it's done. So I was going to pull the plant, and I was going to let the 665, which grew the 1009, I was going to let that plant fill it in and take it.
Sure.
But I had 4 secondaries that were huge before the break in the vine.
Sure.
And they were pitchfork back. Some of them was along the fence line between the garden and the fence, and the other ones came out where I grew the 825 at them in the yard. And so I was looking, and the stump on that thing was tremendous. So I'm like, I think I'm just going to leave it and wait and just let it be a play pumpkin. You know what I mean? And that's what I did. I just let it be the one that grew 602 pounds. It slowed down to like 5 to 8 pounds a day. It didn't really grow, but Pig, I called the other one Pig. I mean, it was growing pretty good. It had a really good growth rate. But yeah, I mean, if I would have just known more about the hormones at that stage and knew that the pumpkin was the plant was switching gears in the hormone because I had a pumpkin on the vine, sure. Right? And here I am you got 20 days from the time you set fruit, you got 20 days to get that plant as big as you're going to get it to last the rest of the season. Now you can continue to let it grow, but after that 20 days, the growth kind of stops a little bit, right?
It slows down. It switches to putting on the fruit. It's trying to put the focus on the fruit instead of the
right. So I thought, well, I got 20 days to get my plant to this size. I need to push it harder. I didn't understand that it's trying to switch gears and go from growing plant to growing fruit. And I go out there and dump all that nitrogen on it and blow that main. So I really think that if we start understanding the timing of the plant and understand everything about the timing, from the time that plant comes up and pops cotyledons till the time it goes out in the fall for a frost or whatever.
And I tell you, a person that I feel like would be a good person to talk to would be Joe Holland. 7-time champion at the Moon Bay. I think he won. He had been there 7 times and won it that many times. Right. He's one of the pioneers. Well, one of the pioneers to, besides, a few other growers out there. But for getting the pumpkins as big as they did, I would know what his take is on the hormone and how he feels about time. Because I just feel like that man growing pumpkins, like he had 20 plants. I call him every spring I go to his website and I call him Mr. and Mrs. Holland. And he was an incredibly nice man. Knowledge. His knowledge is off the chart. And we got a lot of great growers out there. Tons of other ones, but it is super impressive how much humans as us have taken plants and started to understand them better than we could ever imagine. I mean, Who thought if you go 40 years back, who ever thought a 1,000-pound pumpkin? Now we've seen two. We're almost at 30.
Well, me and some other guys, I'm not going to say who just yet.
Yeah.
But we think we have figured out the key to unlocking 4,000 pounds.
Oh my gosh, that's insane.
And it's not in the genetics that we're running right now. It's in the genetics that are back that we didn't. For instance, let's say me and you were back in 1998 and we was growing these pumpkins, right? And you grew one that took off like a rocket, and I grew one that took off like a rocket, and everybody started grabbing those genes and running forward with them, giving us what we have today. Right? Now, if you go back to 1998, it's a little bit more diverse than that, but I was just using that for a
metaphor.
Yeah. So, technically, if you go back to like 2012, all right, that's whenever the big guys come on and everything got pushed forward off of all these certain seeds, which I don't blame anybody, because the theory would be bigger to bigger makes bigger, right?
Yeah.
Here's the problem with genes, though. You can only do so much with those genetic traits of bigger to bigger put together before you start running into problems, and start really bottlenecking the gene pool. Right now, It's not like us or breeding dogs so much. And I do think that if you have ever bred dogs, you make a pretty good pumpkin breeder. I really do believe that, because you understand genetic traits, recessive traits, and all these different things, right? And homozygous and heterozygous and all these different things that are okay. Put him up. You got him? Here, give him here. Open this up. Open it up for me. There you go. All right. Sorry. So, all right. You need water? Yeah. All right. Here you go. Thank you, buddy. All right. So anyhow, you got all these different things. Give me a minute, baby. So you got all these different. Okay. Thank you. So you got all these different things that, that come into play, right? But what we were taught and what we were thinking is, well, we got to take the biggest ones to the biggest ones and move forward. And while that's true to a point, it's also the thing that can really be the demise of everything, right?
Correct.
And so what we have to do is, there's seeds. Let's say that there was seeds that me and you knew of, but because ours did so good and people did so good with ours, we just kept breeding our stuff or their stuff, and we just ran with the biggest ones that took off that, back in our time, right?
Yeah.
And we never dove back into the gene pool that was diverse and different, that had different things that could unlock the potential for other things, right?
Right.
So what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to start going back, several generations, all the way back 2012 and back, as far back as we can get, really, and bring those things forth. And people's going to say, well, why would you want to do that? Those seeds were, nobody grew them out because they were smaller and we just kept running with the bigger. Well, there's where lies the problem, because you didn't grow all them out. You don't know the genetic potential that was within.
Right. Well, go ahead.
Well,
I'm sorry.
If you don't know the genetic potential that's within them, how do you know what could have been unlocked, or what you can do when you cross them old genetics with the new genetics, bringing them together? The biggest ones we have nowadays on the face of the earth that nobody would have dreamed remotely possible back when 800-900 pounds or 1,000 pounds was the big ones, right? How could you have ever, okay, baby. How could you have ever, you go. How could you know unless you cross them and figure that out, right? And so I think, now, like I said, this is just a theory we have based on a lot of good information, a lot of good research, talking to some people that's a whole lot smarter than myself. And, they're going to tell you, like when they grow corn or they grow any number of things, if they're looking for something that's not in the genes today, they refer back to the old genes, bring those old genes forward into the new genes and see what happens. And a lot of times it unlocks genetic potential that was there but was lost because we bred it pretty much out of them.
Correct.
By chasing, we chased one trait, which was biggest, and we lost a ton of other things.
Right, and that we didn't realize we lost. That was part of the importance of what the achievement that we're seeking currently.
Right, and exactly.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I think that's a very good. That's something I haven't thought about myself. Now, the other thing I really looked into was the CO2 levels.
Yep.
CO2. I mean, not to switch out of what you're talking. Like I said, the genetics. I think we need to go back and pull those genetics forward. But I was also wondering with the genetics and if we could increase the CO2 levels in our soil between the two combinations. With the other things that we already feel like we do pretty well now, if that wouldn't also help as part of the.
Well, I mean, you think about this. You take a seed that we got nowadays, and you take an old seed, and you grow them. And I almost bet $1 to a donut. If you grow them old seeds, 2012 back, even back to 2000. You grow that seed the way we grow today, knowing what we know, and having the knowledge and the equipment as far as fertilizers go.
Yeah,
I guarantee you those seeds will grow 1,000 to 1,500 pound pumpkins, even though they might come from little old 500 to 800 pounders.
Yeah, and the thing is like I said, the technology is at our fingertips, so we have everything to be successful at doing this. And so many people have written books on this, and they've done the science. I mean, there's still more science to be done, and
right.
you and about some of the science, about seed weights and stuff, and
yeah.
Does the seed weight, does that have something to do? So if you get a top-notch seed from a grower and he sends you a seed, did you get a good seed or did you get a dud? And did you overpay for it? Not to get into a different subject and that matter, but seed weight, that's just an example of what I'm kind of getting into.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up because I'm going ahead and here's what I'm going to tell you. When the information comes out in January, because I'm pretty sure that's whenever me and him agreed to do the next live stream is in January on this topic, because I think he'll have most of the tests done by that time.
Yeah.
So, and if it's not, it'll be February or sometime, but it's going to come out before next season starts.
Sure.
Your seed weight has a huge impact on how well that plant is going to do. From everything that I have seen, and I've seen a lot of stuff in the past month and a half or so. I am totally blown away and shocked at the amount that the weight is. Now let's just take, for example, a 60-gram seed coating and all, seed germ and seed coating weighs 60 grams. You got the same seed out of another pumpkin, or out of the same pumpkin rather, that weighs 30 grams seed coating and germ inside.
Yep.
You take them apart. The germ inside the 60-gram weighs 30. The germ inside of the 30-gram weighs 15. And the 60-gram will outgrow, and dang near every time, not every time, not almost every time, but every time, blow the 15 one away if the 15 even remotely breaks the soil.
Yeah, absolutely. You could have a complete dud. And I tell you, pumpkin seeds, because of the size that they are, it's distinctly able to tell where I will never plant a flat seed. If that seed is flat looking at it, I will never put it in the ground because I'm wasting my time, because I know it's already dead. But
well,
I find the ones that are about to bust out. If they look like they're about to bust out, that sucker's ready to go. So I look go ahead.
Here's what's going to happen. It's going to force growers to grade their seeds.
That's right. Yep.
You're going to have a high grade and a low grade, just like you got grades of wood.
Yeah.
You'll have high, mid, and low. And that's going to force them to grade their seeds, and their price is going to come based off of the grade of the seed.
Right. Well, and that'll be good, because at least people know what they're buying. So he's like, well, I can't afford to buy a $500 seed. I'll take the $20 seed, but maybe I'll get lucky and grow something with it. You know, it will drive the prices up, and it will for it. I think it will. If we get to grading seeds, if that's where we end up going, and there's a good chance that it probably will go that way eventually, because this industry as growing giant vegetables is increasing every year. People are drawing to it, and I think it's because it's exciting. It's something cool, like, wow,
Yep.
look at this, a 4 foot carrot, or I grew up.
Right. Right.
You know what I mean? Something like
Yep.
that. People are fascinated. So the fascination will draw the crowd. And when you draw the crowd, it is going to force us to take these things in consideration when we put them up for sales, we put them into auctions. It's going to change the dynamic of things. And I'll use I don't know if this is a good example, like baseball cards. If you ever
Yep.
grew up collecting baseball cards, back then when I was a kid, we weren't grading cards PSA. We were trading and selling, but nobody graded cards. But then what happened with that situation was people started faking them, and then
Yep.
they said, well, we need to see if this is a 10 or if this is a 4. And
Right.
the price changed a great deal, but it's the same token. So we didn't used to have, and I think seeds are going to that point because
Well,
we are getting crooked stuff going on out there.
I'm glad you brought that up too, because here's the thing. I ran into a situation just, last week. We were trying to find these old seeds, and we're trying to trade, what seeds we had, because there's a group of us that is doing this together. We're a collaboration of growers who have this train of thought, and we think we found something that's pretty cool, and we want to dive into it together, and we're going to find out whether it's just a theory or if it's legitimately backed by what we've been told by smart people, right? And
Sure.
so I'm trying to trade up these seeds, and one guy's like, well, how do I know it's legit? I was like, I don't know, because I said it is. I mean, it looks like it. It's on the pack. It says it. It has a stamp, from that grower, et cetera, et cetera. And he's like, well, I've been growing for 20 some years. I don't know whether it is or not. And I'm like, you really think somebody would fake that and like risk their reputation to fake something, dude?
Yeah.
I've seen some pretty bad stuff, is what he says, in 20 some years. And I'm like, that's crazy to me. So then it got me thinking about this. How would we know? Once something goes to auction, once it leaves the grower's hands,
Right.
How does anybody know after it leaves the grower's hands if it's ever real again or not?
Right. I mean,
because you can fake everything about that seed. You can fake the package. You can fake the stamp. You can fake everything about that seed. How do you ever know it's real? So that got me thinking about this. Why aren't we DNA testing and basing this stuff?
Yeah. Well,
and having a DNA-based test, because here's the thing. If you end up growing it out, now recessive genes are a whole different thing, and they throw some weird stuff sometimes, right?
Yes, they do.
And they can just pop up. You got a big, beautiful, bright orange pumpkin that you bought a seed off of, and it pops a green one out. Because I had 2 of them this year that H.C. Williams grew of mine. I gave him 2 of my 665s, and he grew them, and both of them had green on them. And I'm like, they were beautiful orange, but they had green. And I'm like, why does that have green? I ain't got no pumpkin, got no green in it, So, and nobody else that grew my 665 had any green in it. So I'm thinking, did he mix them up or what? And I go researching, and I'm like, oh, you idiot, you idiot, you idiot, you idiot. When I crossed the 1883 Bayou, that was the mommy.
Okay.
And it was a 2350 Ginger times self, right? Well, he locked in that orange genetic, that big, beautiful orange, flat, long shaped, wide pumpkin. He locked it in. That's what the 665 looked like. But when I reintroduced the 2350 back into it, which was orange with green on it, I reintroduced that green back into the gene pool like a dummy and didn't even think about it.
And you didn't think about when you gave it to him because you didn't realize you crossed it up like that. Yeah, I mean, and
I didn't even until I seen his 2 pumpkins with green on it. I didn't think nothing about it. And then I'm like, where did that come from? That should have been beautiful orange, no green at all. Then I had to go back and start looking, and I found why. So recessive genes are crazy, but here's what I'm getting at. Let's say you grow a seed, because people are going to be like, well, how are you going to DNA test a seed? Well, let's say you grow out a seed. If we've got a DNA base of pumpkins, now this is going really deep into it, but if we have a DNA base on pumpkins, you grow a seed out and you don't think that is the correct, seed, right? You think you got gypped on it. You could go and get the plant and DNA test that plant to see if you have whatever that seed is, whether it's a 665 or whatever it was, right? But you got to have the base first. You got to have DNA testing done first. And I think it ain't going to be anytime soon, but like you said, eventually, as things progress, we start grading seeds and we start doing all this and fakes start coming out. That will have to be the way to fix it.
Yeah, and and there are people that might be still listening to us. I know we've been going for a while, but the thing is things cost money. Inflation is going up. Everything that comes out of our pockets, we're not getting raises. So when we spend money for something, it's got to count for something, right?
Right.
So the thing is people want if they see something and, oh, I like that, I want to do the same thing. They want to make sure they're getting that. And I think if it came down to like a PSA, we'll call it DNA testing for a pumpkin seed, that the seed would have to go to a company that specialized in that, take that seed, put it in a capsule with a lock vacuum sealed on there. So, okay, this seed has been tested and we guarantee that you got what you paid for.
Right.
Now that's just batshit crazy thinking that direction. But I mean,
it may have to come to that.
Yeah. And I don't think the research or people even thinking that way is kind of a wrong way. I think we do need to think outside the box and not go into it blind, but actually go in it with open eyes and say, okay, there might be some truth to this. Let's see, because if we're always cross-pollinating one thing to another to make X, Y, and Z, then okay, well, let's think about what we're doing and then what we're thinking about what we're offering. Because as you know, and I know, you get wrapped up in the season and you're doing your damnedest to grow the best thing you can grow out of your garden because you're in the moment, right?
Right.
Now, I can tell you my butternut, there was absolutely nothing. If somebody said, well, did you cross with it? Absolutely not. That's the only thing that was even in the pumpkin thing within 20 miles. There was,
right.
I can't cross with the watermelon, I don't think. So
right.
there was no way to change the genetics of that butternut.
Right.
And so anyways, but when you're growing multiple plants, the possibility of you doing it, because you could have missed a male flower, you could have missed the female flower from two different plants, and oops, it got pollinated. The oops, I forgot to call it,
right.
And then, hey, Mo, this thing's beautiful, so I'm just going to go with it. But just like your situation, you accidentally, a seed went to somebody that you thought was going to be a bright orange when it had a green stripe in it.
Right.
That wasn't intentional. I was like, oops, I forgot.
Well, I mean, it's just recessive traits. I mean, there was nothing I can do about it.
No. You didn't realize it at the time. That was just, those are things.
I mean, here's the thing: the 2350 Ginger is not known for throwing green. It's known for throwing bright orange pumpkins, right? But it itself, the 2350 itself, was orange and had green on its shoulders and around its sides a little bit. Not a lot, just like patches, right?
Yeah.
And so those two pumpkins that HC grew had those same characteristics, and it's just recessive genes. It's just a recessive trait. Danny Vester grew a 2350 and nobody believed it was a 2350 because it come out, had cantaloupe skin and was pretty much all green with a little bit of pink on it, and it was a 2350. So, I mean, recessive genes, recessive traits are really odd and they can do some strange things, and sometimes your soil is what brings that out.
Absolutely. 100%. I completely agree with that because, the mineral makeup chemistry of your soil is different regions.
Yep.
Even the same state, you could have, I don't know, you could have 20 or 15 or 20 different types of minerals in a 20-mile radius just because of what's around you, the environment. The environment is different in every place. And
people don't know this, but there are flowers that are like honeysuckle bushes.
Yep.
They are controlled by the acidity and nutrient levels.
Correct.
On the color of their flower. You could buy an orange bush, orange honeysuckle bush, and it come out pink in your soil because of the acidity level and the nutrient level in your soil.
Yeah, well, you see that in hydrangeas. Hydrangeas, you can change the color by the iron. I think it's iron that changes the color from a purple to a white.
Right.
By iron content. And so there are a lot of plants that are sensitive in nature that will change the flower colors or pitch colors. And like I said, that makes sense for pumpkins too, and maybe even with the recessive gene with that green stripe in that one, maybe that wasn't even your pumpkin. Maybe it could have been something in the soil that could have helped intensified it.
Right.
It didn't show up in your soil.
Right, exactly. And it very well could be. And it could be the same with the orangeness of my pumpkins.
Absolutely. 100%.
Maybe the soil is got something in it that makes them a little bit more orange than normal. I mean, nobody really knows, it's all very strange things, that stuff that we're trying to learn and comprehend.
Now, I think maybe a way that so with the seed of your bright orange pumpkin and stuff is if now, was that bright orange pumpkin, is that a pure breed or was that a cross strain to create that beautiful orange pumpkin you had? Was that just a pure breed for that plant, or was that crossed with something else to get that orange, you think?
The one at the state fair?
Yeah, the state fair one.
So that was a 665 Cook, and that was the 1883 Bayou times the 2350 Ginger.
Oh, okay. So you have two genetics to equal the RC Cook, correct?
Yeah.
Okay, so you got two genetics going in to equal that beautiful orange pumpkin. So if you have the same chemistry makeup and you give it to somebody else that lives 40 miles away and they plant the exact identical seed, it would be curious to me. And what you would do is maybe take your soil samples, from whoever you use to do your soil samples, compare notes, your trace mineral levels, and all of that, all the way down. And you both do it on the exact same day. Hey, you do it on April the 4th. I do it on April the 4th. We do everything simultaneously. So we want to prove a point, because if yours is a bright orange pumpkin and his is a cream colored orange pumpkin, but it's exact same seed. Now let's look at the soil breakdown. Let's look at the trace minerals in the soil and see what the difference is. If we did things identical, let's see how much off we are, and then see if we can pin one of those nutrients. Like, this is way high, like I'm way high in iron, this one's way low in iron over here. I'm not saying iron is a good example of a mineral to look at, but I'm just saying, looking at the differences that way, and then research those minerals and say, well, if mine's higher and yours is lower, is that what caused it to change the color? What was the color? Because then if you could figure out the color tone, then you might even make it even a deeper orange. I don't know if you could, because yours was like it looked like it was orange.
I think a lot of it is going to fall back on the genetics. I really do. I think a lot of what we have will fall back on the genetics, but I think there could be something to the pigment. You know what I mean? Yeah, like I say, I would say probably 90% is probably genetic based. And there may be, not saying there is for certain, but there may be, like the flowers, a acid or if you got a high acidic level or maybe a different nutrient level of something in there that could create something more orange or make a recessive trait be more prevalent.
Yes. Yeah.
And so let me explain why, so everybody understands. The only reason why I say this is everybody who grew the 665 Cook.
Yeah.
So you have the Holidays up in British Columbia. They grew 2 of them.
Right.
They won HD awards with both of them. Big 1692 and 1038, I think, or 28 was the other one, right? Big, bright orange, beautiful pumpkins. So there's 2. Then mine was a third one. Paul Yarosh, he grew a 665, big, beautiful orange. There was there was 2 other ones that were grown. And then you had H.C. Williams in North Carolina, who grew 2 of them seeds, same 665 as everybody else, grew 2, and both of his had green in them. And that's why I'm saying that maybe a soil type, or maybe it ain't soil, maybe it's weather. Maybe the hotter weather made the recessive gene come out. All I'm saying is it's weird that all these pumpkins grew big, beautiful orange pumpkins, but that one guy had 2 seeds, 2 plants, and grew 2 orange pumpkins with green spots on them.
Right.
Now, what's the chances of him growing 2 of them like that? And maybe 1, I give you a chance for recessive traits showing up on 1, but on both of them, the recessive trait showing up on both when everybody else was growing orange is a little bit less.
Well,
you know what I mean?
Here's a question I have for you. So let's go way back to the 90s, right? So if my memory serves me correct, and this is a really long time ago, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe the way the giant pumpkins came about, the way Atlantic giants came about, is they took a Hubbard squash and they crossed it with the field pumpkin, because the Hubbard squash came from Nova Scotia, and they used the field pumpkins to. No, that's not right. I mean, I'm not sure.
So field pumpkins are C. Peppo,
Okay.
and Atlantic giants are C. Maxima, so they will not cross.
They won't cross.
Yeah,
Well,
not to my knowledge, they don't cross. So I do know, though, that they bred green squash into it.
But I mean, that's the Hubbard squash that I'm referring to, I believe.
All right. So, I've never seen a Hubbard squash get that big, but maybe.
Yeah, I'm talking about.
I do know that they said true green squash was hard to get. It's still hard to get a true green squash to 500 pounds or more. They had to breed pumpkin back into it to get the squash to grow.
Yeah.
So
well,
it's weird how those, how Howard Deal done it, but he's got you can read a lot on that. I've read some on it, but I forget exactly how it was bred. But I know if I'm thinking right, they bred the squash in the green squash, Hubbard squash, whichever one it was, into the Atlantic giant, and then they ended up breeding the Atlantic giant back into the squash to get a bigger squash.
So they kept until they got the giant genetic to push it. But what I was trying to get to, where I was trying to go with it, is I wonder if that green trait that pops up can have that hereditary trait from something that was 20 years ago.
It can. Recessive genes are just that. So recessive traits can be homozygous or heterozygous. Heterozygous is having 2 of the same genes. Homozygous is having one of the genes. And so when you break all that down, it's just like breeding dogs or breeding snakes. You ever see these really pretty colored snakes?
Sure.
They're like, and they call them like sapphire, jewel, olive egger, smoking hot, or whatever. I mean, some of these snakes got names as long as supercalifragilisticexpialidocious, right? And it's like, what in the world? But the reason why is because they're naming off how much is in there. And so some things can be het for, okay? So het would mean that they have the ability to, they themselves are not that color or that specific gene, but they're het for, meaning that the one or both of the parents carry that gene and it's bred into them. And so what we would say, I guess, about the green that comes out in our plants is all of our pumpkins now, because squash was bred into them, all of our pumpkins are het for green squash.
Right.
So, and then green squash is het for pumpkin because we went back the other way too. So it's very interesting stuff, and it gets way, way more involved than what I can even explain.
Yeah, it gets deeper. And like I said, my knowledge as far as that, I mean, like I said, that was something that I couldn't remember. I was a kid whenever I was trying to understand how to dig. So excuse me for not speaking, correctly in that manner, but, and there's
you're fine, man.
Yeah, there's a lot. There's still some things there's a lot that I don't understand. I learn something new from growers all the time because
me too.
For me, I want to be a better grower, and my knowledge, if somebody said, "We have secrets, don't you?" I said, "No, I don't have any secrets. If I know it, I tell you because
I tell everybody."
Yeah, I want everybody to do it. Like I'm be working with my kids' school, and I want to teach young people to do this stuff. It's not about just us; it's about our future generations.
Absolutely. If we want them to garden, we have to get them out there and involved in it. And I've been saying this for a long time. We want our kids to be more productive in growing and this, that, and the other, but we don't ever give them an incentive to do that.
Right. Absolutely.
Why are we not incentivizing them to grow these giants?
Right.
Why don't we have kid weigh-offs within our own big weigh-offs?
Yeah.
Line them up with the adults. Put them in the lineup with the adults. You know, if they got a 500 or 600 pounder or 1,000, whatever, line them up in there with the adults so they get weighed just like the adults do. But have a kid class there where they can place first through 10th or whatever, and encourage them to grow.
Well, I don't know if you noticed at the Virginia State Fair, there is a youth category.
I seen that. I did see that.
So yeah, they've done it. This is my second year going to the Virginia State Fair, and I'm really happy this year. I mean, this year they tried to do. I know you've been to different way-offs, different places and stuff, and you know Virginia has some things they need to learn and learn to do better. But they also try to incorporate the young people because it is fun for the adults, but it is also important that our youth gets involved with this. I mean, I did this 4-H as a kid growing up. And what got me excited about gardening was growing a giant pumpkin. That was my first true love. And I, going to Iraq and Afghanistan for, 12 years, I didn't get to garden. So I almost forgot about gardening almost. And then, I told this to my niece and my nephew. I said, you know what? Things that you did as a kid, sometimes you have to go back to your roots because you might have been good at that, but you should go back and try it again because, I just I said, oh, well, I'm an adult. I don't have time for it. But then I said, you know what? Let me go back to my roots. Let me go back to where I started from. I didn't have much growing up as a kid. Gardening was our thing, but I loved doing it. I said, you know what? Let me try it again. And I did, and I've done pretty good every year, but anyways, sometimes going back to the basics is always sometimes the best avenue to go than getting away from it. And that's kind of what I kind of do is I went back to go back to what I used to know.
That's true, man. That's true. That is true, man. So, I know you're gonna have to go. Any advice you would give to anybody wanting to start up and start growing?
Yeah. So, what I would tell folks, and this is what I tell everybody. I said, if you haven't tried it, try it, right? And I said, food is important to grow because if we run short of food, right? If we run short of food and you don't know how to grow your own food, then how can you take care of yourself or your family if we have shortages? And we've seen shortages through COVID. So I just tell people, say, get out there and try it and see if you enjoy it. And if you don't know how to do it, ask somebody because there are gardeners out there that are willing to share the information. We're willing to share the seeds, not just sell them, but actually willing to give them to you. I do. I know you do. There's a lot of growers who, and I will show you how to do it. So if you've never done it, because everyone's, oh, I got a brown thumb, I can't grow it if I tried.
Right.
Also, try and I'll help you. I'll show you how to do it. And then you're like, oh, wow, this is fun, know, and kind of make gardening fun, make it exciting to everybody out there, young people, older people, and just show them how fun it is. Yes, it's work. Don't get me wrong. My back hurts sometimes.
Right.
Yours has too. But working with your hands and getting out of the office or getting out of indoors and getting out there into nature, that's what it's really all about. And that's what we did before, if you went back millions of years ago, we didn't have buildings, we lived. So anyways, I just say we should make it fun for folks. And if anybody wants to reach out to me, RC, and I know they reach out to you and stuff, I'm happy to answer questions or help people. If there's something I can do for you to help you, or, we learn from each other, man. We're brothers, brothers from different.
That's right. That's right, man. So, you mentioned you got a way to reach out. If anybody needs help, just reach out. So, where are your what are your handles? I guess I should say.
Yeah.
Where are you located at on social media? If anybody does want to find you.
So I'm on Facebook. You can look up my name, Jason Loris, on Facebook, and on TikTok I'm J Giant Veggies, I believe. I actually have to go back and look at my TikTok because I created it. I'm kind of bad about it, but I have a little TikTok, a little social media. TikTok. I have Instagram. I'm on Instagram too. But yeah, the Facebook. If you reach me on Facebook, just look up Jason Loris, and we'll start there. And then if they say, "Hey, what's your TikTok?" then I'll look it up. I don't know it off the top of my head. I need to write. So my apologies there.
Hang on a minute. Let me see if I can help you out there. I'll see if I can find your TikTok real fast so that everybody can know it while we're on here.
Yeah, that'd be good. And I haven't posted anything for the last since the first part of November because I've been down with with COVID first November. Then I got shingles last 3 weeks. I'm trying to get that, so I haven't been on social media. So I've been kind of quiet, but I plan on getting
Right.
back up.
Yeah. So on TikTok, it looks like your handle is just Jason Loris, all one word.
Okay, so it might be okay. So it's Instagram is probably a
Yeah.
I think.
I'll check it real fast too.
Okay,
So
I know one of these.
so
Should
it's
probably out a
Jason
little
Giant.
bit.
It's Jason Giant Veggies on Instagram.
Yeah, okay, Instagram. Okay,
So
so I appreciate that.
yeah.
See,
Yep,
I see it
Jason
now.
Giant Veggies on Instagram. So there you guys go. If you're looking for him, you can find him there. And while you're there looking for him, go on ahead and click those little buttons that follow him. Okay, because he's a great guy, and you need to follow him so you guys can follow along in his journey, and you can see how he's doing throughout the season. So it's been a great time, man. Been a great time. Is there anything else you want to tell anybody?
No, I think I'm good. I mean, as far as what we've talked, I think we've done everything under the sun pretty much from one extreme to the other. And I mean, we could probably go all night until we couldn't keep our eyes open, honestly.
I'm sure. I am sure of that, because there's just so much. There's just so much that you can cover. I mean, there is no bounds when it comes to this stuff.
Well, and I will say this will be my last point, and I'll stop. Hard work, dedication, and detail. Detail. If you do those three things in anything, whether you're growing or whatever it is, if you use those three elements, that's what I've used my whole life. Hard work, dedication, and pay attention to detail are really the key opponents. And I think you probably might agree with that a little bit there. Was helping you be successful and whatever it may be in life.
That's right.
So
absolutely,
man. I really appreciate you so much, man. You're doing such a fantastic job getting the word out there.
Hey man, I love doing this, man. Doing these live streams is what I love to do. I love getting growers on here, gardeners and homesteaders on to talk about what they do. Because here's the thing, we all do it differently.
Oh, we do.
And there's probably an idea that I might have that I do here that you've not thought of that might be the missing link to making you successful. And right. So I see it as my job to bring as many people from these different communities that I'm a part of, homesteading, gardening, and giant growing, bring them in, have them on my YouTube channel, and share that information. Because not only do I find it helpful, but I know other people have found it helpful because they've messaged and said, hey, that live stream that you did with so-and-so really helped me understand whatever it was, right? And so I really like it because it unlocks everything, because I don't have all the answers. I don't even know what I'm doing half the time. I'm just out there doing stuff. You know what I mean? And I mean, even a blind hog finds a nut every once in a while. You know what I'm saying? So I just get lucky sometimes. I'm learning as I go. And I know some people might say, well, it looks like you do pretty good for learning, but that should tell you how easy it is. Like, yeah, it is difficult, but it's easy. It's not impossible. It's easy to do.
Well, and I've heard some comments from different ones that I've talked to just in passing. It says, oh, well, I could never do something like you did. I couldn't grow a 100-something pound butternut. That's just, that's not reality. I said, it can be reality if you want it to be reality.
Right.
It's hard to fathom it, but I know when I used to see people on TV, I've seen Wallace and I've seen Joe Holland. I admire those guys a great deal. But I seen that stuff. I said, that stuff's not real. I can't fathom that you could do something like that. But then there's so many people that have done it around. Right. I said, okay, this isn't fake. This is a legit thing. This is possible.
Right.
You just got to do your homework, reach out to people when you have questions. And if you only get to 200 pounds, it's, well, what did I do wrong? And then, this could be my first year to go for a big pumpkin. I'm going to try a big pumpkin this year, and I'm going to try to do it on a 150-foot square, that challenge that they have.
Right.
I'm going to try to do it. I don't know what I'm going to do. It might only be 100 pounds, or might be 50, or maybe it gets a 1,500. I don't know.
Right, exactly. You don't know until you try and put your best effort forward. And even if it's not good enough that time, You know, I believe firmly in the motto, if at first I don't succeed, try again.
Absolutely, 100%. And so that's what people got to do is just don't give up the first time just because you weren't successful. You will get it because you'll get determined and say, damn it, I didn't do it this time. I'm going to do it next year, and I'm going to fix whatever I didn't do right because it will get to you. Because like you were talking about tomorrow, you talked about the Morrow squash, how you couldn't get one big because you're like, damn it, what the hell's going on with this damn plant? You know, why is it not making a big one like everything else is big?
Right.
You know, and I'm sure it probably bothers you because because you're a very determined individual. You're going to say, I'm going to figure this out one way or the other.
Well, I want that state record. You know what I mean? It's only 89 pounds. I want the state record. You know what I mean? Come on. So,
but anyways, I'm sorry. But anyways,
no, you're good, man. You're good.
Thanks, brother. Thank you for everything you do. And like I said, I'm here always, and I'll love to, if you want me back again sometime.
Yeah, we'll have you back on.
Yeah, I'd love to do it again.
Definitely have you back on, man. We'll try to figure that out when we get off of here. So, December 19th and December 26th, the next coming 2 weeks, I'm not going to be here on a live stream, guys. So I'm going to be on vacation from live streaming on this channel, and I'm going to be over on my buddy's channel, Kettle Kitchen, and we're going to have some fun over there. I'm going to be over on game night. So if you want to catch me the next 2 weeks on the 19th and the 26th, catch me over at Kettle Kitchen, Tony over at Kettle Kitchen. You guys will see all that. Also, while I have you all here, be sure that you go and you start looking at the odd holiday meals, all right, put on by me and Kettle Kitchen. All right, we got a collab that we've been starting. It started yesterday, and every day from now until the 25th, there are going to be videos posted every day about odd holiday meals, non-traditional holiday meals. So go check those out and give those people some love. Give them a thumbs up, follow, and all that good stuff. Now, one more thing before we go, because this is the last one that we're going to do this year before the first of the year comes around. On January 2nd, we have Hematite Homestead coming back on with us. So Stephen down there at Hematite Homestead, he's going to be on. We got a really good episode planned out. It's going to be a lot of fun. You aren't going to want to miss it. You also don't want to miss it because we're giving away the Canafogger. All right. On January the 2nd, we're going to pick a winner for this Canafogger here. Now, in order for you to be eligible to play for this, you must be subscribed to our channel first and foremost, and you need to go on any video and write subscribed. Once you have commented with subscribed, I'll see that. I'll know you're subscribed to the channel. The second thing you need to do is share a video. Doesn't matter what video it is, just share the video and tag Heavenly Hills Homestead in it. Now, you can tag me on Instagram or TikTok or here on YouTube or on Facebook, all right? But make sure that you tag me. If you don't hear from me within 24 hours, whatever platform that you are on that you shared, go on ahead and message me on that platform, and I will find you and the video that you shared, and I'll comment back with a number. That number is your number for the drawing, okay? Now, what we're going to do to pick this is I'm going to give Stephen a number. Say we have 20 people. I'll give him a number 1 through 20, and Stephen at the end of the show is going to call out the number that he wants to pick, and he'll say that number, and that will be the number that wins this. Later, GT. Thanks for stopping in, man. So that'll be the number that wins this. So you can also share as many videos as you like and tag me in as many of them as you would like, and that will be as many numbers as you get. So the more you share, the more you tag, the more numbers you get to play to win for this thing. So, guys, with all that being said, it's been a wonderful place to be here. I can't thank Jason Loris enough for coming in and stopping by this evening and hanging out for the past 2.5 hours. It's been a great time. We've had a lot of fun. I'd love to have him back on. And in fact, I'll try to get him back on in January or February so you guys can learn more about what he plans to do in the future and what he maybe plans, if he'll let us know, what he plans on doing next year, growing. You know, we'll see. We already know he wants to do the 150 square foot competition, but he's got a whole 2,500 square foot area that he's got to fill at 150 square foot out of 2,500 ain't that big. So he's got a lot more room for a lot more giants, and we want to find out what he's going to be growing this year or next year rather. So we'll get him back on. But guys, it's been a great place. Thank you again, Jason, for coming on. We really enjoyed it, man. Really did. But guys, we're going to get on out of here. We appreciate each and every one of you watching. Thank you so much to my moderator for helping me moderate this evening. I really appreciate that as well. And guys, we're going to get out of here. We'll see you next time right here in the Hollers and Hills of West Virginia. See y'all.
There we go.